All right, well, we have a quorum, I believe. I'm assuming, Raymond, there you are. Great. Okay. I think we can start now. Sylvia, I'm sure will be along shortly. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Tuesday, April 27th, 2021 workshop meeting for Verona Borough. And can we start with the pledge, please? Pledge allegiance
to the flag
flag
of the United States of
United States of
America,
America,
Republic for which it
Which
stands,
stands
stands
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, can you do roll call, please?
Yes, I'm sorry, I had it muted.
There you go.
I'm sorry, I was still muted. Dr. Carpenter,
Present?
Mr. Matlin,
Present.
Mrs. Provenza,
Present.
Sylvia here,
Yeah,
Yes,
she
present.
said.
Mrs. Loalba,
present,
Mr. Suchovich,
Sure.
Mr. Forbach,
I am here.
Mrs. Redzak Showalter,
Present.
Mayor Recupero, I'm here, and Mrs. Susan Hockenberry.
She's here.
Is Susan here?
Sorry, I'm here. I was muted. Apologies.
Fine.
All right,
Everyone's present.
Thank you. So, as promised, we have Mr. Peter Vincere here from, wait, let me get the name, Hosack Specht, Mutzel and Wood, certified public accountants who has completed our 2020 audit. And he's here to report on his findings and share that with council and the public. So take it away, Mr. Vincere.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. So you should have received a copy of the 2020 Municipal Annual Audit and Financial Report for the Verona Borough. The report includes our opinion letter on the schedules from the DCED. So our opinion letter is in there stating that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with a regulatory basis of accounting, which is what the DCD requires to be reported on these schedules. So that's the reason for that opinion letter. It does say it's not in accordance with GAAP because the DCD does not include footnotes and other items that are required under GAAP, but it isn't fully in compliance with the DCD reporting requirements. So in that report, we report a number of the funds that the borough has. Obviously, the general fund is the main operating fund of the borough. There's also special revenue funds, a capital project fund, and trust and agency funds, which include the pension fund. But just looking down through the general fund itself, at the end of the year, the general fund has cash at the end of 2020. General fund has cash for $345,825. There's some payroll tax withholdings that are due at the end of the year of a little over $4,600. There's also due to other funds of $562,782. Of that amount, $551,854 is due to the sewer fund, and $10,900 and some dollars is due to the police asset seizure fund. So at the end of 2020, the fund balance in the general fund is a negative $221,578. And we'll look on the next couple pages as to where it was the prior year and how it got there. Like I mentioned, the other funds, the special revenue funds, include the highway aid, sewer, and police asset seizure. The highway aid fund balance at the end of the year was $156,420. Sewer fund balance was $551,984. And then the police asset seizure fund still has about a little over $10,000 in there. Capital projects, there's $4,547 fund balance left in the capital project fund from a number of years ago. Those funds are obviously to be used for various capital projects throughout the borough. The trust and agency fund, the borough does have two pension funds, one for police and one for non-uniform. The non-uniform pension fund is administered through PMRS, Pennsylvania Municipal Retirement System. That fund is not included in these statements as PMRS still has not provided year-end statements for 2020 or 2019 still, let alone 2020. So we do take exception that should be included in the schedules. It is not. So what is reported in there is the assets are in the police pension fund of $375,352. The borough also has some long-term debt. I believe it's just only debt that's left is a capital lease on a fire truck. So the balance on that is $208,453 at the end of the year. So as I said, the changes in fund balance for the year for the general fund were, let me get to that page, were a positive number. So it was a positive $122,220 for the year, meaning that the revenues exceeded the expenditures by $122,220. But you have to take into consideration within that was a transfer from the sewer fund to the general fund for past expenses that should have been properly reported in the sewer fund. So as part of the process of going through the audit and so forth and talking with Dave and Susan and Nancy, we went back and looked at the sewer fund expenditures in prior years and determined there were some capital projects in there. There was some engineering costs that were reported in the general fund that should have been paid by the sewer fund and should have came out of those assets of the sewer fund. So that amounted to $282,507. So to put that in perspective, like I said, your general fund did have a positive revenue over expenditures for the year of $122,000. But if we exclude that $282,000, the general fund really had a deficit of about $160,000 in 2020, meaning that its expenses exceeded its revenues by $160,000. So that's when you have to take a look, when we look at the budget and so forth, really need to look at the budget for just the general fund itself and not include the funds that are being generated from the sewer fund as part of the general fund revenues to account to balance that budget. And I think that's where the differences were coming into play in prior years is overall the borough with the general fund and sewer fund, those revenues and expenses were sufficient to cover the budget and break even. But the sewer fund revenues really are required to be used for sewer fund expenses. Okay, so that's why we went back and looked to see if there were some expenses that we found that would have applied back to those prior years, and that's what we came up with. We also looked into part of the public works employees, whether a portion of their time is spent on the sewer. So we did account for a piece of that also. There's not a lot of time, it's about 10%, I think is what we came up with through the analysis and talking with the employees there as spent on sewer. So that's probably where the biggest thing is you want to take a look at those items there. Like I said, the fund balance is in the sewer fund around $550,000. The highway aid still has over $100,000 in there too, to be used for expenses going forward. So that's sort of a quick summary of where the results were for the year in terms of revenues, expenses, and what the balances between the various funds are. Like I said, the general fund still owes the sewer fund over $500,000 from prior years for costs that were paid out of the sewer fund, but the cash had not been moved over into that fund to cover that. So I think that's what everybody's sort of been working on, trying to determine how we're going to get that paid back. As we go forward, we'll definitely we're looking at all the expenses to make sure that what is a sewer expense is charged in that fund and properly accounted for within that fund itself. So that's sort of a quick summary. The sewer fund itself did have a positive increase during the year. So the sewer fund, excluding the additional transfer, had a a positive number of $173,000, meaning that its revenues generated from the billings were in excess of the expenses of the direct expenses of the sewer fund by $173,000 for the year. So that's that's sort of where that fund is, and that's sort of been close to about what it's been running in terms of the revenues over expenses. There was a little bit more this year because there was a grant that was received from Alcoasand of about $40,000 that was sort of a non-recurring item there. So that's sort of where the financial numbers are and where you need to take a look at in terms of moving forward with trying to determine how to get that due to decreased over the years. What is the plan? And then also what is the plan to ensure that your general fund by itself, that budget is being balanced and that its revenues generated from the general fund sources are covering those expenses. And whether any of the sewer fund revenues are going to assist that, but if they are, we would recommend that be, transparent and that be budgeted as such if that is what council would want to do. So that's sort of the summary of the financial statements. I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'll be more than glad to answer anything anybody has over those. In addition to the statements itself, we also do issue a couple other letters. We issue a letter of governance, basically just stating that, we really did not, everything we received was accurate in terms of documents that we had. There was nothing held back from us. We didn't really encounter any significant delays in the audit or anything like that this year, obviously with a report being issued in April. So that's the other letter. And then the other letter is the SAS 114 letter. It's a letter regarding reportable conditions and internal controls and suggestions for improvements over some of those weaknesses that we noted during the audit this year and actually during the prior years too. Probably the biggest thing that we've talked about is making sure that each fund is sort of accounted for separately and that you can determine the balances in each of the various funds separately and not all as one fund. So that, that there is a balance sheet and an income statement for the highway aid fund, the balance sheet and income statement for sewer fund, same with police asset seizure fund. So you can look at those and see what the differences are and what the revenues and expenses are of those specific funds. Some other items within there, comments regarding record storage, just ensuring that the financial records of the borough are maintained and stored in an organized and systematic manner. So when somebody is looking for information, either currently or going back in prior years, it's readily available so that, that it doesn't create an issue of trying to find documents, which just delays, any process, whether it be an audit or anybody else looking for information. The police asset seizure fund, those funds are required to be segregated under federal law because they are funds that are received either from the Department of Justice or from other federal sources. There's also a required report that should be filed annually with the Department of Justice, documenting the details of if there were any revenues received during the year, and if there was any expenditures of those funds. We've just been running off an old report of there's about $10,000 in that fund. So that should be accounted for and ensure that is accounted for properly. Sewer receipts and the billings, obviously the Oakmont Water Authority does your billings. They do the billings, but then they would issue a check sometimes more than once a month. We noted some of the deposits in 2020 were made late or after what we would consider to be a normal period of time. So we would recommend, when a check is received, that deposits are made timely. Not that you're earning a lot of interest, if any interest in any of the funds, but just to ensure that those deposits are made timely. So to avoid any, check being lost or any items like that, but to be accounted for too in a timely manner. Some debit cards. I know the borough has issued some debit cards to certain members of the borough. We would recommend that some kind of type of policy be determined or written to ensure that those cards are being handled properly, and that there is a policy in place to make sure that if there are charges on there that aren't authorized, or if there are charges that are on there that don't have a receipt, that there's repercussions for the people that are using those cards, because you want to ensure that every charge has support with a receipt and is proper expense of the borough. So we would recommend some type of policy be issued on with that. So they're the main items, and I think we've talked with, I know we've talked over these previously in the last couple of months as to what, needs to be improved. I know you changed bookkeeping, so I think you're on the, on that track of getting, the financial statements segregated out so you can sort of see where you are and where the differences are as you go forward. So that's all I really have, unless I'd be more than glad to answer any questions if anybody has anything.
Yeah, Peter, thanks for that presentation. I appreciate it. Quick question: the transfer from the general fund to the sewer fund for those expenses that we identified, that shows up in the report as one lump sum for that. I think it's 282,000 you mentioned. So it's not broken down by engineering versus DPW wages, that sort of thing, correct?
Correct. That's in one number. Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So if we, going forward, if we are tracking that in our accounting, is that going to show up on future reports as, if we identify engineering costs to the sewer fund, is it going to get broken down that way on your future reports for DC?
I think we would charge those as a direct expense in that sewer fund and not in the general fund. So if you, currently how you're maybe, well, not currently, but if you were paying a bill out of the general fund, that expense should really show up as an engineering expense in the sewer fund and not as an engineering expense in the general fund with a corresponding transfer. So you'd want to put the wages and the benefits within that sewer fund, and same with engineering cost or any other capital items, as opposed to showing it as a transfer.
Yep. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. Are the pension funds, like when we pay our MMOs, are those held by the same bank as our other accounts?
So the money that comes, the money that's paid when the MMOs are paid, I think it was one of the other management letter comments too, the MMOs weren't paid timely. But so once you write those checks, you send those funds, like for the police, go to PSAB, which is a trust that holds the pension funds. So PSAB holds the police pension funds. They invest those and then they report back to you the interest and dividends, and they pay the benefits out. For the non-uniform, that money goes to PMRS. So when the MMO is paid, it's transmitted to PMRS, and then they administer the non-uniform pension fund, pay the benefits, generate the interest and dividends, and report that back to the various municipalities of funds that they hold, which we're still waiting to get those for 19, but they're working on it.
Anybody else have any questions? And just for clarification, Peter, when you say highway aid, you're talking about liquid fuels, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah, that's same,
Yeah.
yes.
And I think on our accounting system, somehow, the capital that you were referring to, the 4,500 and some odd dollars,
Mhm.
it says on our reporting that it's the fire fund or something.
Yeah, I think it was a fire truck fund, and I think they were proceeds that were received when that fire truck was purchased. I believe that's how that came about, and that was the balance that was left in that account after the payments were made for that fire truck. I think that's testing my memory there a bit, but I believe that's where that came about.
If I
But
may,
there's a
if I
separate
may,
bank
I thought
account for
that
it.
was, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
If I remember correctly, a bunch of years ago, the council started a fire truck fund and put money into that, I believe. I believe that's what that was for when it started, how long ago? That's my understanding of what that was. Maybe Dave would remember, Dave Recupero, but I think that, like, however much it was, 4,500 was part of that. They was going to start putting money away for a fire truck.
You're absolutely right, Ray. I mean, we did that 10, maybe 15 years. Councilman Kevin Larkin started that fund. So it was back when he was on.
So to clarify again, I mean, there are funds that are like sort of legal funds, which is the general fund, the sewer fund, the liquid fuels fund, and the police asset seizure fund. That's what I've learned over the last couple of months. So when you say a fire truck fund, that's like money that was designated maybe for the fire truck, but it's not an actual fund. And Peter, I think you referred to that particular amount of money as a capital fund or a capital project fund or something.
Yes. Yeah, it's
so-
how we have it reported on the statements.
Right. So.
There were the
Um,
funds to be used for fire department capital purchases. Was that the intent of that when that originally started?
I
Back,
guess,
Basically,
back in the day, we had 2 older trucks. And they decided that they bought one. I believe this is when we bought that 04, Dave, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then they says, we're gonna start
it
putting
was,
money
yeah, when we
away.
bought the first,
Yeah, and they're gonna start putting money away.
yes.
And I guess there was just one transaction or one deposit, and that's what it was.
Yes,
well, this is something I guess.
yes,
we
you're
can-
right on that.
Yeah, we can figure out later, but is that a fire truck fund or is that a capital project fund?
If that, Peter, I believe that's the Pliget, one of the 2 Pliget accounts. And it is labeled as fire truck fund. The amount you have, 4,547, matches the balance in that.
Yeah.
So that's what it's labeled. It's the Pliget is the Pennsylvania is the local government investment
Trust,
I have
yeah.
that correct.
Yeah.
So the other account we have with Pliget is the liquid fuels, correct?
I believe that's correct, David. Yeah.
So
Well, could that money go into the general account? I mean, or put it towards this year's payment?
Yeah, you could use it towards, if it was specifically for fire, I guess you could use it towards part of the debt payment for the fire truck that you're paying off. You know, it would really just come down to what council wants to do with those funds, and maybe, like I said, I wasn't going from memory there. I don't have any files in front of me, but I thought maybe that's where that came about. But if it came from funds to be used for that, then maybe council could make that decision to use those to make part of the debt payment on the, in 2021. And then close that account on if that's what you'd want to do.
But then I thought we also were wanting to start to establish a capital project fund. So I don't know if we want to morph that into that or not.
are you thinking of a 5-year capital plan, Nancy?
Yeah, I'm just going from what I'm remembering, how Peter referred to that 45, 47. He said
Oh.
capital project reserve or something like that. What term did you use, Peter?
Just a capital projects fund. That's how it's reported on the DCD report.
Yeah. So yes, that is what I'm referring to, Dave, and I don't know whether we want to start over, use this 45, 47 toward this year's payment of the truck. I'm not sure what the protocol is for doing that type of thing. So, oh, Susan, go ahead.
This is a great conversation. 2 things I would add to it. You're right. What are you going to, is that going to be to accumulate assets to pay for a future fire purchase or used for the debt service as possibly was suggested? Or is it a capital reserve for future capital projects that potentially when you have a capital improvement plan, you'll make a schedule to draw down on it? Really good question. I would suggest as part of a robust budget process for 2022, you make those decisions, because that's what that's what the budget's supposed to do. It's supposed to line up where your revenues and other resources are to pay for your planned expenditures. So that gives you time to take a better inventory with Matt to know what your true capital needs are, to talk more in depth with Ray and the fire department about maybe future capital needs there. I don't think you have to decide that tonight, but I think you guys are really on the right track in terms of making good decisions about planning. it's like a savings account right now. That's what it is. And given that you're still in the deficit fund balance position, it's nice to have that savings account. I don't think you need to make any decisions tonight if that's helpful.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Susan, and I really wasn't thinking that. I just wanted for clarification purposes. Because I was a little confused. Is it fire? Is it capital? You know, which was it? So, okay, any other questions?
Yeah, Peter, you mentioned, I think in the letter, the equitable sharing agreement report that's due to the Department of Justice. Do you happen to have more information about that, or could I, like, because I'd asked about it last year. I don't know if I haven't seen anything in our records on that, so I wanted to make sure we get on track with that. I don't know if you point me in the right direction, maybe offline or something, but
Yeah, what I can do, David, I can send you the copy of the last one that we have in our files, which I think was from 2018. So I'll send that to you, and then you can take a look and see if that could be tracked down. And you know, maybe it's been filed, we just haven't received it. We've asked for it, but that's sort of. But at least you'll be able to see what report we're talking about there.
yep, that would be great.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, Peter, you're welcome to stay if you'd like, but I appreciate your efforts and great job on the audit. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. It was a pleasure working with everybody and look forward to continuing that. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. So take care. Have a good night.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay,
Okay.
Thanks, Peter.
Bye.
bye-bye. So I did add a couple of agenda items. One was putting Jen Walzer on for to go over their plans for their anniversary celebration here during the registered comments. So Jen, you want to talk real quick about that?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone, and thanks, Nancy, for squeezing me in. So we're kind of thinking the same thing that we tried to do last year, right? Which you guys all approved, and COVID happened. So we'd like to do our block party, but keep it a little more under wraps. But we feel like we're to that point where we might be comfortable doing a little bit of something. So we'd like to ask if we can close the street. And I don't know if it matters, but we don't need the whole street, but I'm pretty sure the chief told me once we'd have to close the whole street if it needed a part of it. But really in front of us and then probably to the borough building or past the borough building is what we're thinking. So maybe half the street. And what we'd like to do is just set up tables, have a couple food trucks, rent tables and chairs, like extra ones, so that people are sitting and maybe not standing and dancing around, but also have DJs throughout the day. No live bands yet, just DJs for music and food trucks. So keep it simple, but try to have some kind of celebration.
And when is this?
June 5th.
What time?
So we'd probably do all day. Saturdays we open noon to 10, but probably we'd shut the street part down 9
a.m.
p.m.
Yeah, I think the reasoning, if I recall, for shutting the street all the way to south is because if people come down south and make a right, then what do they do when they see they can't go any further and they have to keep doing 3-point turns to turn around and go back out?
Right. Yeah.
Is that correct, Mayor?
Yes, and Jen, I have no problem of shutting the street down. I will make sure the chief and the street department are aware of that.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay. Happy second anniversary.
I know, exciting, right?
Yeah.
One quick question. So if we decided, because we probably will need more restrooms, if we wanted to get some porta potties, is that okay? Or the restrooms in the borough building, would those be available?
Well, we have the restrooms in the borough building available
That
for
would
the
be
car crews, right? Right, Mayor?
Yes, we do. That would be up to the board.
Well, I guess what my thoughts are about that, the car cruise is a whole bunch of people. And we seem to manage by just using the borough building bathrooms. So if we can do that for the car cruise, I personally don't see a problem with using the borough building bathrooms for this celebration for IGB. Does anybody have any objections or some points that I'm missing about that?
And
We
we'd use
also-
ours also. Sorry, we'd use ours also, but I'm thinking we'd
Right.
want extra.
Right, of course, yeah. Mike, go ahead.
No, that's what I was gonna say. You have yours also that are available.
Right, yeah.
And you're not doing the park, right? You're just doing the street.
Correct, yeah. I'm thinking the parking lot maybe is where the food trucks are and we set the tables up in the street with the DJs.
Okay. So people will just have to park further down the street and walk a little bit to get to the celebration.
Yeah, yeah, just like when
Yeah.
we have other events, it doesn't seem to be a problem. People don't seem to mind.
Excuse me, Jen, have you checked with that, that hall down the road to see if they had anything going on? That new place that opened up that rents the hall?
The event space, that's a good idea. I can definitely check with them.
Because if so, I'll have to make arrangements for them for parking
Mhm.
on the street, but they would have to also exit the same way they came in.
Okay, I'll check with them and let you know.
I would have to talk to her.
Great idea there, Mayor. That's a good thought. Anybody else? Questions, concerns? Okay, and public isn't aware of this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
While Jen's here, I was talking to Kelly on Saturday and and I told her I would ask the board while we're on this subject. She had asked about putting 2 tables out on the street in the parking area, and Intergroove would block that area off and put the food truck behind that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Dave. So I think as we're seeing other restaurants starting to open and you're still restricted inside, they're starting to use those parking spaces directly in front of their buildings. So if we could use the 2 parking spaces directly in front of us and put the food truck down a parking spot, that would gain us some more outdoor table seating.
So my question is, have you
And
seen,
once again, that would be up to the board.
yeah, have you seen anybody in Verona using the road space, Jen, or has that been in other towns?
I have it in Verona. I don't know who would. I guess you may get at like on Allegheny River Bowl. I mean, it may be two different. Yeah, I haven't seen anybody use it.
Yeah. So I did ask our solicitor about this legally to see what the ramifications were. And I don't believe that our ordinance allows for that type of use. Although as you look around some places, for instance, in Oakmont, Chelsea's Grill and Hofstadt's put some tables out on a street, but it was not a very widely traveled street. It's a little tiny street, and they brought in Jersey barriers because my concern is that someone, I don't know, would come whipping around the corner from Center Street and, crash into people sitting at tables. And I'm not sure that you want to haul in Jersey barriers. But we don't have anything that says that that's okay to do. So I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'd like to get thoughts from other members of council. Go ahead, Mike.
We're closing the road, right? I mean, it's gonna be, there's a barrier.
No,
that's
no,
gonna
this
be-
is for, this has nothing to do with the anniversary.
Correct, yeah, separate. It's for everyday use, or weekends, actually. We don't think we'd need to do it on the weekdays.
Anyone else? Thoughts? Janet, go ahead.
The idea is
No
to
comment?
have a spot to put tables out on the street next to a food truck. Is that the idea that we're suggesting?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Mhm.
Okay,
Well, that can be sketchy, I think.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
I just, yeah, I mean, there's two things. There's the fact that it's a very heavily traveled road. And so we would have to have some protection. And there's the fact that there's no ordinance that allows for that to happen. We barely, allow tables on the sidewalks. So, okay, thank Janet, more to say on that?
And my fear is, if there's children, you don't know if they're gonna dart out, it's just, for public safety in that respect too, with cars coming around, not realizing if they don't see, people seated there, and all of a sudden somebody stands up or steps out and, potential accident could happen. I'm not real comfortable with that right now.
Ray, did you want to say more about that?
No, I have to agree with Janet. As much as I'd like to say, yeah, you can do that because I think it's a fun day and fun times, but just like Janet said, man, you're dealing with people drinking and, kids can just boom, go. And I'm just personally, I'm a little leery against that.
Dave Matlin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, because the city of Pittsburgh has been doing this for a while now through COVID. They actually have a permit process for what they call a parking lane cafe. Jen, I don't know if you're familiar with this at all, if you looked at that, but
No, I haven't. Look.
I know like on Penn Avenue in downtown, in the cultural district, there's sort of Jersey barriers, but they're the plastic water-filled kind, or different types of barriers that protect it from the travel lane. So they have a whole permit process. I don't know all the details of what's involved. I would think before. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I think doing it might, just checking with, insurance liability, that sort of thing, making sure that you guys are covered, Jen, and that the borough's not opening something up. That'd be my only concern. I think we could maybe look into how it's done elsewhere in the city or other smaller towns around and see if there's a way through it. But I don't think we need to do a little more homework on it.
Yeah, anyone else who hasn't spoken, Sylvia or Trish, have any other opinions?
I love the idea, but like Dave says, I think we need to look into how other communities are doing it to make sure everything is safe, probably work on an ordinance, Jen. So maybe this year would be hard, but we could definitely look at doing, I've heard it called parklet, in like a semi-permanent way for you. I think other businesses may be interested in the future as well.
Okay, thank you. Sylvia, what did you want to say?
I agree with Trish and Dave. I think safety first and just check it out completely and then make some solid decisions.
Okay, so Jen, I think the consensus here is we need to look into it a little further and see what safety measures can be taken for the future. It's not a done deal to not do it, but I'm sure you agree we want to be safe with everything we're doing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Thank you guys. And yeah, I'll do a little more homework too and see if there's something we can do to make it a little safer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave put a link in the chat that you could refer to. Click on
That's
that.
great. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, at this
Thanks, Jen.
point, pardon me? No. At this point, this is an opportunity for anybody who has any additional agenda items they want to add to their list, to do that now. Anybody from
have-
council?
I have a
Okay, go
couple.
ahead. Okay,
Stop sign on Maple and Walnut Street. I just got a text from someone on that I'd like to bring up.
okay. Anything else?
No, other than what I have on my agenda, the bushes and the parade.
Okay. Anybody else? I did add, the, motion to extend Harry Dillmore's, work with the borough onto mine. And I think that's it. So at this point, council will hear comments on any agenda items. Please raise your virtual hand and clearly state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anybody want to make any comment now about any agenda items? Okay, fantastic. We will have time for comment at the end of the meeting as well. So Mayor, why don't you go ahead and do your items, and then we're gonna hear from Dave Matlin on our budget amendment that we worked on the 17th of April.
Okay, the Memorial Day Parade is going to go on as planned. That'll be May 31st. And every year, we've always made a donation to the parade. So somebody, with their pleasure would have to make a motion to issue a check for the parade. Both
So-
Verona and Oakmont, they basically pay for the parade.
How
be
much
put on.
has our donation been in the
Cost
past?
of
Dave?
printing. You know what? I honestly don't remember. I tried to get a hold of one of the gentlemen that's on the board. He hasn't texted me back yet. I want to say, what was it? Was it 250 or something? For some reason that sticks in my head, $250.
Yeah, I'm thinking 150, Dave. I don't know. It could be more.
I thought it was 250,
Yeah, I
but I
honestly
could be
don't
thinking of something
remember.
else. We could split the difference and make a motion for 200. Does somebody want, make a motion for whatever amount you want to, but someone does need to make a motion for us to make that donation.
I can make a motion that we donate $200 to the Memorial Day Parade, Nancy.
Okay, first by Sylvia Provenza. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Loalbo. Any other comments or questions about this motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passed. So $200 to the Memorial
All
Day
right, thank you.
Parade. I'll have to get with you, Dave,
All
on
right, thank you.
how to make that happen. So talk to you tomorrow about that.
Okay, and the other thing I have is in 2000, my son built the pavilion down by the river for his Eagle Scout project. He raised, it was over $3,500. And with the money that was left over, he put 2 arborvitae bushes alongside that looked, which looked very nice at the time. They were probably about 4 foot high. Well, today they're probably 14, 15 foot high, and they need to be cut down. They're pushing up against the building. They're very bushy. We haven't maintained them in all those years, trimming them back, but they definitely need to be taken out because it's just going to damage that pavilion down there. If you ride by, you'll see what I'm talking about, if you haven't already seen that. Okay, so, how
do we go about doing that? I mean, I would think that would cost money to have someone come and take them out and,
Street department can cut it low to the ground. I mean, it's just a big bushy, bush. It's not a bush, but it's like an evergreen.
oh, so they're evergreen trees.
Yeah, but they grow straight up. They could start, get a ladder and chop little pieces, cut it in threes. I've
Okay.
done it here at my house. The neighbor had 15 of them that I took out.
Right, but it sounds like what you're proposing is to cut them close to the ground, not necessarily taking out the stump.
Well, I mean, if that's the pleasure of the board to take out the stump also, in due time, it'll have to come out and we could replace it with something else that's more controllable.
Okay, thoughts from the rest of council on this situation?
Could have the guys cut it down and run a stump grinder. You know, it's not a big deal cutting a tree down.
But does anybody
Right.
have any objections for any reason for doing it?
Nope.
Okay, that's fine then. We'll work on that.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and like I
Dave.
said, it's just gonna push on the building. It's just gonna push on the building and we're gonna have more headaches. The last thing I have, Dave, when you went through the town, to look for the stop signs, I don't know if it was a mistake or what, but apparently the person on Maple Street, Maple is off of South Avenue between Athletic and First Street. The stop sign is at the end by Walnut, the alley going down in between Athletic and First Street, and they put it up and there is a sign right behind it for street sweeping. They're a little confused. Why wouldn't it be on the other end of South Avenue where it's more heavily traveled as far as stopping?
Yeah,
I can send you the information, Dave, and you can look at it, Mike too, and you can go from there.
Mayor, I got an email from that gentleman, Zach, his last name escapes me, a while back. I
Yeah.
forwarded it to Matt and to Dave and possibly Mike. I can't honestly remember. Maybe Trish. I don't know. Sorry, guys. But
I didn't-
yeah, so I got back to him. I said, we're looking into it with our engineer. I think Dave had more communication with our engineer, Matt Pitch, and Dave, maybe you can take the story from here.
I didn't have a whole lot of communication with Matt, but Matt did offer a response to the gentleman that reached out, I believe this morning. It sounded like he reached out to several members of council. So yeah, I'm aware of the issue. I think what Matt suggests is maybe we could look at moving it so that it's not in the way of the street sign. As far as why it was put there on Maple and Walnut, we have had issues with delivery trucks or garbage trucks not stopping there, which creates a public safety hazard because people coming down Walnut, which is a little bit of a steep hill, they're not going to stop because they don't have a stop sign. So there's a three-way intersection. There's no stop sign there at any of the locations, and it's not the best visibility. So that was the judgment and the decision, between us and Matt to go ahead with that. He did ask why we didn't put one on the opposite end of Maple at South, and I haven't been up there since his email, but I thought there was already one there. Maybe there isn't. That's something we can look at further, but the suggestion by the resident was to just switch, move the stop sign and put it over there, which we can't necessarily do, or we can't really do without changing the ordinance. Now, I didn't have a chance to look at the existing ordinance, but it's possible that Maple and South already has been designated as a stop for a stop sign, and we just don't have a stop sign there. I'm not sure what the situation is, but we can look into it further and go from there.
Yeah,
I talked to
Okay.
Matt today about that. And he said, when Yins went through, my understanding was when Yins went through, where there was a complaint from somebody about it, that's where they put signs. That's where Yins put the signs. And he said he did reach out to the guy. I got the email too. He reached out and he suggested that he's going to reach out, that Matt's going to reach out to AJ and have that street sign moved to the other side. He said, and he's not sure about the other side of the driver's side of the vehicle then, if you're coming to the stop sign. He said, as far as
Okay,
South Avenue, he's going to look into that.
yeah, his email says he's gonna change the street sign location, not the stop sign location.
Right.
And I believe that the decision on where to have stop signs was totally covered by a traffic study and concerns that were brought up by Trish back many months ago. And then Matt came and did a complete study, maybe with Dave and Mike at the time. And it was determined to put one there, and that is on the ordinance. At first I thought maybe there was, some communication issue, but that is one that was designated in the ordinance as far as I understand.
okay, as long as you all know about it, I'm looking on my phone and it was just addressed to me. I didn't know that you all knew about that. So I'm glad that you are taking care of it. That's all I have.
Matt
Thank
said
you.
Matt said it seemed like he emailed just like single, he didn't do a group email, just
Right.
single members of council.
Yeah, can you send me Matt's email or somebody send me that?
I'll do it right
Thank you.
now.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on the agenda is Dave Matlin talking about our budget amendment.
Okay. Thank you, Madam President. As most or many of you are aware, we had a budget review meeting 2 Saturdays ago on April 17th. The goal was to try to find some reductions in the budget so that we could, so we could balance the budget come end of this year. The reason we needed to balance the budget at this time was we had, learned about as Mr. Vancheri noted in his presentation of the audit report earlier this evening, the use of using sewer revenues to cover general fund expenses. So we had about $300,000 roughly that we needed to a deficit that we needed to close, and I think we had a really good productive budget workshop session on that Saturday. May have been a bit long, but I think everyone hung in there and was patient, and we got through it. So the result of that is we have a proposed budget amendment. We did not vote on anything at that budget review meeting on Saturday, but I think we did come to a consensus with council, and it was open to the public. There were several members of the public in attendance that offered some comment and questions. So I think it was a good discussion. So the product of that is a proposed budget amendment to amend the 2021 budget, and that would get us it would eliminate the 300,000 or so deficit, and we would end up with a net positive balance of $39,976 at the end of this year. So I can share my screen. I won't take a ton of time to go through the entire document. It is, everyone on council received it. It has been posted on the borough website for review by the public. So the document basically consists of, if everyone can see that, the budget, it's split down into, unlike previous editions of the budget or previous years, everything was shown it was only shown as one fund. It didn't have the fund segregation that that Peter mentioned that we need to have. So this is broken out into sewer, or general, sewer, and liquid fuels funds, and then total of all funds. And so if you're reading through this, these are the budgeted amounts for 2021, and highlighted throughout this document are the areas that have been revised. So again, I'm not going to go through every single one or every single page. I'm happy to answer any questions. At the end of this, there is the list. This may look familiar. This is the worksheet we shared during the budget review meeting on Saturday the 17th. And this is basically the carryover. Susan helped me with some formatting, highlighting things that are in common categories or common accounts, and to better read and differentiate it. This is showing revenue changes up here. This is on the left, and then on the right is expenditure changes or amendments. So that's how that's showing. These are all the items that would be changing. Again, those cells up above are highlighted to show where those changes were made in the actual budget document. And then down below, the very last page is some revisions to the chart of accounts that needed to be made to clean things up. So that's another thing we had talked about during the Saturday meeting. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or wants me to go over anything in particular about this, or if we want to. Actually, real quick, the one thing I will add is that the whole purpose of this, or part of the purpose of this, part of the goal, was to be able to get our budget balanced so that we could identify whether we had the money to hire a new borough manager, how much money, and it allows us to move forward with that process as far as dealing with borough manager, secretary, general administration of the borough, and how we're going to fill the current voids there. So to add to that, what I have from year to date for the borough manager line item, as well as the admin line item, which was Marcia's position, we have expenses of $15,087, and the total budget currently, and that was not one of the amendments. We did not change anything with those two line items in the budget. The total amount budgeted for the borough manager and admin positions, that as they existed, at the start of the year, was $94,544. So we've expended about 12.5% of the budget so far, and we have $79,456 remaining. So just so you're all clear about where we stand at, and I think that'll become more of a topic in Dr. Carpenter's next agenda item. But for now, what's in front of us is the budget amendment, and any questions regarding that at this time?
I wanted to note that Susan had also discovered that there was a $3,111 amount of revenue that we had missed from before. so that the ending amount on this budget where, I mean, in the worksheet where it says 39,976, I think you add 3,111 to that and you get like 43,000 something or other. Does that ring a bell, Dave?
Yeah, I think there were some formula issues in the original budget document.
Yeah,
That there was a revenue amount in that amount that was not included in the total revenue calculation. So that's a little bit of a windfall, I guess.
right. Any other questions or comments on this budget amendment? Okay, well, at this point, Dave, you want to make a motion to approve it?
Yeah, I will. For the I will make a motion to adopt the budget, the 2021 budget amendment as presented to council and the public and reviewed and discussed on Saturday, April 17th.
Okay, it's a first by Mr. Matlin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Forbeck. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. I just seen,
Okay,
under military celebrations, 457-000. It says holiday programs, and right under that, civil military celebrations, $250. Is that Memorial Day?
That might be.
I think it might be, Dave. I don't know for sure. I know that the 3,000 in the line above under holiday programs, at least 3,000 of that 3,250 is for the 150th celebration. So
Right.
that would leave $500 left over, 250 in the holiday programs and 250 in civil military celebrations. So I would have to think that that's for Memorial Day.
yeah, one's for Memorial Day and I believe the other one is for Light Up Night, the other 250.
Okay, I guess what I'm trying to say is, there was a motion made for $200. There was we couldn't figure out how much we, gave the, into the parade fund. That's what I'm getting at.
Okay, well, we can address that in a minute. Right now, we need to finish this motion
Yeah.
that's on the table.
Yeah, that's
Any
fine.
Yeah, any other questions or comments about the budget amendment motion?
Dave, you answered all my questions already. I just want to say thanks for taking the lead on this and doing such a great job keeping all the details straight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. And, thank you to everybody for your time on the 17th and to Susan for facilitating a lot of it and, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank everybody for the time and effort they put into this. It was a big undertaking. Thanks a lot.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it was really a team effort on that Saturday. We all contributed. We were all engaged and helped set the policy for this budget. So I thank everyone, the members of council and the public for participating in that.
Okay, so without further ado, if there's no other questions or comments, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? No. We'll get back to that other issue in a minute, Dave, about the Memorial Day parade. Okay, anything else, Mr. Matlin?
Nope, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, under my report, it turns out we do have minutes. I can't believe I forgot about them. It was thank God Marcia was willing to do the minutes before she left on her last day. So thank you to Marcia. hopefully everybody had an opportunity to read them. And I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Matlin. Do I have a second?
Second,
Second by Mrs. Provenza. Any other questions or comments on the minutes? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, thank you. Prior to this meeting, we had an exec session and we discussed the ongoing situation with having someone on an interim basis to be in the office. And at this point, we had a discussion and it was good and we came up with a solution. And I'd like to have someone make a motion for extending Mr. Dillmore's tenure here for another 2 weeks.
I'll make that motion. Or are you making the motion?
No, I don't generally make motions.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll make a motion to extend Mr. Dillmore's services, under the previously agreed to scope of services and rate for another 2 weeks,
As long as he's willing.
as long as he's willing.
Mhm. Thank you. A second, anybody?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, second by Mrs. Oelbo. Any other questions or comments?
Just that we're wishing him well with his father's illness and looking forward to continuing what he was gaining traction with.
yes.
Thanks. Yes, thank you, Trish. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Okay, coming up next is we're going to talk about next steps and about hiring a permanent manager and/or secretary. And Susan Hockenberry has some information for us that she is going to share at this point. I hope.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. May I share my screen?
Please. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. I want to unpin that, sorry. Off to the side. Okay, so, whoops, that's the wrong thing, sorry. So I've made some slides here to try to encapsulate where you all are. In many ways, you're back where you started from, and that is you are looking at your staffing needs, considering the next steps in terms of who you will hire. You got here through maybe a circuitous, but certainly healthy route, if I may make that observation. And it started with the administrative consultancy that we did. This is dated February 28th, which outlined some key recommendations to successfully recruit and retain a candidate who meets clearly articulated expectations. And each one of you gave your time, each council members and some key staff folks interviewed the staff as well as all of council and the mayor. And from that, a picture of the needs of Verona emerged, and that report is full of some overall staffing recommendations. It also reflects the time back in end of February that certain assumptions were being made. Some of those things have changed, particularly in terms of financial management for the borough. That process also revealed the fiscal stress that you're under that Peter talked about a little bit ago. And so from that, we did a second report, which was a cash flow analysis to determine, what adjustments needed to be made to your budget, what the implications of those would be, and hopefully allow for constructive dialogue, which you all did on the 17th, and sort of steady the ship for the next steps. I also want to commend you for the way that you involved the public and were very transparent about the needs to make those adjustments. It was, if I may say so, a really excellent display of governance that Saturday when you were, as somebody said, it was a long meeting, but you were being thoughtful and careful in your choices on behalf of the Verona residents. Early on, we identified some action items and you've checked off a number of those. Your 2020 audit is done. You've handled the building inspection change. You have established standards now for your financial management. You have evaluated the fiscal position at the end of the audit. That's what that last report did. And you also looked at that 2021 budget and validated the amounts and made the necessary budget adjustments. You still need to address some financial policies and also decide how to proceed with hiring a borough manager. We're not going to get to all of your financial policy needs tonight, but I think we can make good headway on your manager discussion. Just to put that information out there again, Peter didn't have the benefit of visuals, but I'm trying to here without this other stuff in the way. This is your this does not include that police seizure fund or your pension funds, but basically your major operating funds. I'm sorry, it does include police seizure. It's part of the other special revenue funds. But this lays out in detail the relationship between the sewer fund and the general fund. And there's the 221 deficit fund balance that Peter mentioned in his presentation, and the liability to the sewer fund of $551,854 after corrections to properly record sewer expenses that were made by the general fund on behalf of the sewer fund. As he said, you had because of that you had a positive change in fund balance, and so when that's combined to your, sorry, it's sort of hard to see at the end there, that combines to your with your previous deficit, and you're in the tune of two, I'm sorry, I can't see it. There it is. Here it is, 221,578. So that's your overall financial position because you owe the sewer fund. The borough, the general fund still owes the sewer fund reimbursement for funds that the general fund borrowed. This is just a very common graph that I've shown several times showing how that situation came to be. And you can see that it's improving here, but you're still in a deficit position overall with your fund balance as of 12/31/2020. So this is a snip right here, straight out of the budget amendment you just adopted. So this blue arrow is pointing to your revenues that will exceed your expenditures this year by $43,089. That's the fund balance that we just talked about. So here's your opening fund balance this year, which is the number Peter just gave you for year end 2020. With that additional 43, if you add to your fund balance, your deficit will decrease to 178,489. Also presented here is your sewer fund and your liquid fuels and the balances that they have. There's still quite a bit of work. There's still quite a bit of work to be done managing and leading the borough in regard to this information. For starters, this is your amount of fund balance, or the revenues exceeding your expenditures in 2021, but it still leaves you in a deficit position. And standards that lenders and others look for in terms of fund balance is usually a minimum fund balance of 5%, which in your case would be a positive number of 100,000. So there's still quite a bit of ways to go there, as my cash flow and budget analysis report already suggested. So you did about the $300,000 worth of adjustments to get, to that 100 would have been another 100, but you're not going to spend more than you're going to take in current revenue for 2021. So that's progress. There's still some policy work to be done, and that is to reduce to writing and adopt as a resolution, as a policy of the borough, what your minimum fund balance is, and also what your capital improvement plans are, maybe a 5-year capital improvement plan, not only for the general fund and just generally within the borough, but to program this significant fund balance in the sewer fund. It's my understanding that when sewer rates were raised and a sewer fee was added, that was to accumulate resources to make needed sewer repairs. But those schedule of those repairs has not been produced yet. And, that needs to account for the use of that. The other thing that's going to happen is you're going to, as Dave mentioned, start recording your sewer expenses in your sewer fund. So you might not actually increase that fund balance as significantly as what I'm saying here, because I don't have any estimate to base it on. But either way, you're still going to maintain a pretty significant fund balance in the sewer fund that's going to need to be programmed. It is this fund balance that was borrowed from by the general fund that led to the interfund liability. Liquid fuels is just chugging along there quite nicely. You're going to be using 110,000 of that balance because you are transferring some for a capital project, and then also you are purchasing salt and street lighting out of that. But at the opening of this year, you had 156,420 in fund balance. So that will still leave you with funds that you can only use for those purposes I've mentioned, like street lights and salt and some road construction. But you'll still have a fund balance there. You will also, and that's what the red arrow here, the other big thing that's on your to-do list is to begin to make the sewer fund whole. So how will you pay back that interfund liability? The second report recommended that you commit $100,000 per year for the needed. So you can see that 551,000 is the amount that's due to the sewer fund on your statements that Peter presented tonight. So 5.5, 6 years, if you did that, you would make that whole. And because you are setting a policy to pay the sewer fund back, you are complying with the rules about having a special revenue fund. Your solicitor issued an opinion saying that you should do exactly what you are doing, which is ceasing immediately relying on those special revenue funds for general fund purposes, but also having a plan to pay it back. So that 100,000 in the next 5 years is going to hit your budget, your general fund budget, just like any other expense. So that's one of the things that you have to be planning on doing. And the reason I mention all this is this all factors into, what do you have available? What can you commit to for your staffing complement? And then the last thing on that action list is, do you need to adjust sewer rates? That's just on your to-do list as well. If you're not utilizing those resources for capital, is there room to provide some relief to ratepayers there? And that's really significant because the reliance on the sewer fund the last couple of years, if you look at this graph, has grown. And generally I would average it to be about $200,000 a year. And one of the recommendations that I made in my report is fund current expenditures with current revenue, which means the borough, to correct for this use of sewer for general funds, would have to increase taxes to generate that, or cut $200,000 probably of capital next year and for the foreseeable future, which also is going to reduce the ability of resources that you have for other operating costs, like a manager's position. Okay, so in regard to the staffing and hiring discussion. So where we are is next steps, as Dr. Carpenter said. Dave just reported that you have remaining in 2021 for your positions of $79,456. In my report in February, recommendations based on input from all of you were made, and that would be that you would hire a borough manager and create a position, assistant borough secretary. Borough manager would serve all of the ministerial functions of the borough secretary, and that the borough manager would also be the zoning officer. We also discussed in that report the key competencies in professional management that that you would need to achieve the priorities that you outlined, including creating an environment of supportive governance that is supportive of professional management, and the board evolving as a policymaker. And you're coming into your own on that. You know, your budget is the principal way to make policy in local government. And if you guys continue the trend that from the 17th, you know, that's really positive. That was some you know, fine display of governance there, and the board is evolving as a policymaker more than a doer, you know, than a body of volunteers that have to get projects done, but deciders more so than doers. We also identified as a result of the budget and everything in this discussion that we'll need to update the job descriptions, advertisement, and interviews as a result of your discussion tonight. So what I'm hoping to engage with you on is a discussion about making a decision between a manager's position or a borough secretary. And I have this little table I'm going to share with you in a second that I call an imprecise comparison of manager and borough secretary's positions, because I want to be very, very clear that, you know, both positions, a borough manager and a borough secretary, they're both responsible positions. I would suggest that the differences lie in degrees in terms of the level of executive discretion and power and authority that you would like to see present in your administration to you know, to accomplish the goals that you set for the borough. So I'm going to escape out of this a second, and the reason why I want to I'm not distributing this spreadsheet is because, like I said, it is imprecise. It's just you know, based on my years of experience and my discussions with colleagues about differentiating some of the duties, but it's certainly with utmost respect for both positions and recognizing that there are exceptions to all of these kinds of statements and that they are generalizations and you know, are only as good as the generalizer. So I've made two columns on this spreadsheet to show a borough manager position and a borough secretary position. And so I'd like to rattle off a few of the items that I've identified here in this list. So a borough manager and a borough secretary, as I said, both perform sort of those ministerial functions of the borough secretary. They keep the seal, they attest documents, they certify documents. They are the official filer of forms with the state and so on. They are the records officer. They prepare meetings and agendas and minutes. It starts to diverge here at the budget. Typically, the borough manager is responsible for the budget. Even in large municipalities that have staff and staff understaff, the manager is ultimately responsible for budget. In fact, the International City Management Association, when they sort of distinguish sort of the key features of professional municipal management, identify budget responsibility and personnel responsibility as a unifying principle amongst all the various different kinds of job descriptions and duties managers have across the country. But one consistent theme is preparing the budget and responsibility for personnel as consistent. There's also the accounting and bookkeeper function. Generally speaking, a manager does not perform that, and sometimes the borough secretary does perform those duties. Coding transactions for accounting, both managers and secretaries will perform that. That's assigning, you know, the account numbers that Dave talked about in his presentation, That's how you manage that. Those are management decisions, right? That's how you manage budgetary control. So it's not just, paperwork and so on. Assigning those account numbers tells, basically says what your creates the information about what your financial statements are going to say. They both do that. Annual audit, both handle the annual audit, provide information for the auditors. Payroll and time card entry, sometimes in small municipalities, managers are responsible for that, but it's a sometimes and certainly all the time, secretaries are empowered to do that. Some differences here, and that is typically a manager's office has an ordinance creating the office and the powers and duties, and the position in that ordinance has sufficient authority to manage projects, people, and performance. That's a uniquely professional management responsibility. Setting policy for purchasing, drafting, RFPs for professional services. Are you able to have the expectation that that is a skill that your manager should have? Generally speaking, managers, they either know how to do that or they learn how to do that, and they take responsibility for drafting RFPs, particularly for professional services. I mean, they're not necessarily writing specifications for your road improvement program that require an engineer, but for a wide range of programs and services, they do the purchasing and procurement. For managers, there's generally an expectation that they are knowledgeable and make recommendations on almost all aspects of municipal business. Many a good municipal secretary comes to be an expert in municipal business, but it doesn't necessarily stand as a prerequisite for the job as it does for municipal managers. I don't know what that one was there. I apparently deleted one by mistake, but whatever that was, yes, managers do that. I'm sorry about line 15. Handling intergovernmental relations, grantsmanship, representing municipalities to other agencies such as the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission, state government, the U.S. government authorities, and sometimes the COGS. Managers typically do that. I mentioned the budget earlier. Supervising department heads, hiring and firing, all this those are the personnel responsibilities that I mentioned earlier. And making day-to-day management decisions. A lot of stuff that you guys get involved in Verona, you're serving as volunteers doing that. That's sort of the tradition there, but some of those things could be lifted off of you if you had a full-time professional manager. Serving as chief administrative officer for the pension plan, having a responsibility for that failure to do that is, a fireable offense. That's a typical responsibility for managers. Developing strategic for the organization and comprehensive for land use plans. Yes, that's the bailiwick of managers. Sometimes managers serve as zoning officers, and in fact, given sort of the size of Verona, but your community development aspirations and where you're heading as a community, that was why I recommended the zoning officer be included in that job description for your manager. Certainly capital planning, financing, and project management, getting a lot of these projects done that you're talking about. Typically managers, or municipalities that have professional managers see lower engineer professional fees, not because they use less engineering, but because a lot of the project management can be done by the manager, and generally that's at a lower hourly rate. So there are some savings associated with that. Managers, you should expect to support their professional development by, paying for their dues in their professional association, and that being a member of those professional association comes with certain expectations by the field, by their peers for professional practices and ethics. Managers usually have an education in public administration. Often that is an advanced degree like a master's. Sometimes you have that in borough secretaries positions. And managers are always exempt and salaried employees, and usually borough secretaries are considered non-exempt, which means they are eligible for time and a half, but not always. That's why I didn't just make that a definitive no. So like I said, that's an imprecise comparison, but it's an effort to try to explain the differences as they exist out there in the industry. let's see, where was I on that? Yeah, sorry, I'm at this slide. So as I was saying, you need to make a decision. You're hoping to make a decision. I know you're looking forward to making a decision. Hopefully that what I called imprecise comparison will help you distinguish, and you're thinking about, which of those works for you, which of those scenarios is most suitable for you. Some of the things you already have done also needs tweaked. I would suggest a more concise job description. It's ambitious, the job description that you have, but it's so comprehensive that it's unclear as to what your priorities are. Job description should be easily digestible so someone knows what their responsibilities are. So I would suggest a more concise job description. I would also suggest some more succinct questions for the interviews. Now that we've gone through this and we know what your priorities are, let's make sure that those are well aligned to the duties. Let's make sure we're not asking any yes or no questions. Your questions should message what's important about to you about what the borough needs, so that tees up an answer from your candidate that speaks directly to that. I would also suggest, given everything that council has been through to getting to this point, that your process be more inclusive of all of council if they wish to participate. And then something unusual that I just discovered, which I would address in the long run, is your amendment that you did to your borough code earlier this year. It was an amendment to your manager's ordinance, and it removed the powers and duties section of the manager's office and said that it was replaced with the job description, and the job description could be revised by a resolution. Well, that that isn't a strong signal of support of professional management. So, when you guys are a great council, but when times get rocky, future councils and future managers will rely on that ordinance to clearly delineate roles and responsibilities and have to make decisions. And if those responsibilities are encoded only in a job description that can be modified through resolution, it significantly weakens the organization's ability to be steady and deliberate. Look, it's not hard to change an ordinance 2 months in a row. You read it and it's changed, but it is, government is an intentionally process-oriented environment to help make good decisions that are inclusive and slow it down. It's not always known to be the most efficient environment, and that's for a reason, to make it deliberate and cautious and prudent. So you might want to, I'm definitely recommending that you restore the ordinance if you're going to hire a manager, because managers they're smart, they know their field. They go and they look at that ordinance to see what their powers and duties will be. And so I would suggest that you consider restoring ordinance level establishment of their responsibilities. So put in another way to look at that, comparing your choice again. Here is a typical opening of a job description for a borough secretary and a typical one for a borough manager. Now, I know this seems subtle, but they are different. And like I said, there's many a borough secretary that has great executive ability, and I have a lot of respect for them. And so there are exceptions to this, but generally speaking, this is what we see out there in the field. So, secretaries, if you notice some of the words here, are responsible for day-to-day operations of the administrative department, providing coordination for council, the mayor, and staff. Yes, you definitely would like experience and knowledge in local government management principles, particularly around finance, budgeting, human resources, contracts, utilities. These are things that come across the administrator's desk, preparing the budget, handling the financial reports month in and month out, making sure your payroll's done correctly, hiring people, making sure workers' comp is paid for, all the things, people's benefits, all the things that are associated with human resources, executing the contract, making sure the garbage contract gets paid, utilities, things like your sewer bills, are the rates correct, and are customers getting answers to their questions. Even though you have a billing agent, there may be questions regarding sewer bills that they come across their way. And if you're lucky, some ability to write some grants, particularly for those state grants. I'm not talking about, sort of fancy, foundation proposals, but certainly seeking some grants through the county or state. A bachelor's degree in public administration, business, or combination of education and demonstrated experience. So you can see, a bachelor's in public administration is desired, but it's not crucial for a borough secretary position. It could be a business degree, and it could be some combination of education and demonstrated experience, like I said. The threshold there is 3 or more years. The borough manager, by contrast, is responsible for the overall administration, management, and day-to-day operations of the borough government, again, as opposed to the administrative department. The borough government and services, including personnel, budgets, purchasing, infrastructure, capital improvements, grants, and pensions. Borough manager is a leadership position appointed by an elected council, and the borough manager is responsible to carry out the policies and directives of council and reports directly to council. So you can see that in this scenario, council set a course and turn to their chief administrator or chief executive officer to carry it out. Oftentimes there's always a 4-year degree there, and oftentimes a master's degree, and more experience expected with that. So and I can put that back up in a minute as well, but that's a narrative comparison as well. And I just want to make one other remark. It's part of the report, and just want to emphasize it again. We're going through a generational shift in many ways, as a society, but certainly it is profound in local government. The gray tsunami is happening. And one of the addendums that I put on the report was this article about winning the war for talent, and how do you attract, rising professionals and have them stay and do good and prosper in your community. A lot of what the research shows on this is that the climate for workers who are motivated to go into public service really is very important to them, sometimes even more important than tangible rewards like pay and benefits and so on. So, clear and predictable councilmanic activities is a signal that professionals are looking for. Some suggestions I would make for Verona, based on my experience observing Verona and learning from you, and what I have become familiar with in other municipalities. One of the first steps you might want to is to schedule and advertise your committee meetings. They're just like any other meeting. They sit on the calendar, whether in Zoom or in person, but they always happen on a regular schedule. And they're advertised and they're open to the public, and that avoids any problem with an additional council member maybe showing up and observing because you don't have any Sunshine Act concerns. And this is a practice that a number of well-oiled machines of municipal management rely on. The second is, again, this would be a departure because of necessity in Verona. A lot of work gets done by your committees. But the committee doesn't really have, if you look at the Borough Council person's manual from DCED, the committee doesn't have an official role to perform duties. The committee is to be advisory. As my grandma used to say, many hands make light work. So 3 members of council become experts, so to speak, on something, recommend policy, and make those recommendations to council to act on as a whole. One of the things you could do that's an easy tweak to your agenda is to put the council reports in the first half and then move to a new business and an old business section of your agenda where action is introduced in that section. Yeah, maybe 9 times out of 10, it's the same committee chair that talked about the report up in the other section, but it differentiates the committee responsibility from the council as a whole responsibility. So that's a subtle tweak to the way you organize your agenda, but it also shows that clear understanding that committees are advisory, because you don't want to create an environment where someone's thinking that they work for 7 committees. You want to make sure that they sense that and know, and it's clear that they work for a council as a whole. Two municipalities in the region have adopted council rules manuals. And I know everyone's like, well, we use Robert's rules. Well, actually, nobody really uses Robert's rules. No one's really a parliamentarian in local government. What's important is to have rules, right? You're often inspired by Roberts, but have rules and regular ways of sort of managing yourself. And those are defined by you. It's not like someone tells you how you should do it. This is your own sense making and how you guys resolve to work together. But 2 are listed there, and I think I forwarded these to Nancy previously. Edgewood Borough and Plum Borough both have council rules that they publish, and it lays out things like the committee structure that I just described. What you hear a lot in articles like the one I have there on winning the war for talent is, let the manager manage. This is the healthy relationship between a board and its chief administrator. Employees then also respect that council manager form, right? So you have employees that take their complaints, if you will, up through the chain of command to the manager. And likewise, the manager is empowered to hold them accountable for performance and standards and policies that you all set and you have empowered them to do. So these are some of the things that I'm recommending that you look at in terms of supportive governance. And I think that's my last slide. So during all of this, I know I've been talking a lot, and I'm sorry because I'm only on one screen tonight and I can't see any of you, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen, or at least open up the window there, and I can put anything back up on the screen that you'd like. Are you still awake?
Yep, we're here. Thank you, Susan. Wow, I learned a lot from that. So, given all of this information, I think now is the time to hear from everyone on council their thoughts about borough manager, borough secretary. Where are we? Where do we want to head?
Could I ask a question real quick, Nancy, for
Sure.
Susan? Susan, could you touch on the, I believe there is a DCD or borough code definition of, or role of secretary, or it's a, I don't know if I'm looking for the right term, but designated role. Is what you're outlining for a borough secretary position, is that in line with that, or is that something different?
No, it's in line with that. If you have a manager, a lot of times you'll see manager secretary. It's like Secretary of State, if you will, almost, right? It's not to suggest that, it's like a clerical position or an administrative assistant kind of position. That's a very old-fashioned term anyhow. So the ministerial duties, as I called them, of the borough secretary are embedded in the borough manager position, but not all borough secretaries are managers. And somebody said to me today, borough secretaries aren't administrative assistants. In other words, that's not sort of a plug and play from other organizations. People tend to come into this career from a lot of different routes, so I can't begin to tell you all the way borough secretaries are made, right? Like how they go from where they start to when they become, fully capable borough secretaries. But a secretary position is distinctly different from a manager's position. But the manager job description would encompass all of those responsibilities, the filing, the testing of documents, the seal, the ability to commit, the signature cards. All of those duties could be in a secretary or a manager's position.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
I have a couple questions too. Sorry.
Just, real quick, if we were to hire a borough secretary as you defined this evening, what do we do? How do we cover the places where a borough manager would be taking the responsibilities that a borough secretary is not able to do? How do we fill that gap?
Yeah, I think your committees are still very engaged at that point, right? You know, for example, your secretary may have a lot of finance acumen, but if they do not, they would need to work closely with the finance committee and the committee chair to develop the spreadsheet. You know, they would do things like prepare the documents, right? And perhaps collect information from the department heads. They would make sure the accounting records show the current budget so that you could do the comparison. But they wouldn't necessarily be making policy recommendations about one choice versus another. Whereas if you look at if you look at a manager's budget in a place that has a longer tradition of professional management, you'll see at the cover of every one of their budgets, the manager writes a message and recommends certain policy, recommends certain spending plans very intentionally as part of their job. That's what those boards are relying on the manager to do, is to help set policy. And that's what I would say would be the biggest distinction, is that the manager helps to set policy much more so than a borough secretary.
But it does also sound like dealing with the budget is a big responsibility that is held more by a manager than a secretary.
Well, like I said, the manager and secretary both have budget responsibilities. It's a matter of degrees.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Trish, what were your questions?
Thank you, Madam President. So since our meeting, when you asked us to kind of think a little bit more about what responsibilities we would like to see, one thing that came to my mind that wasn't actually on your list, Susan, so I wanted to ask where it would fall, is grant writing. Is that something that both would typically do?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Trish, I did move through that pretty quickly. I did have grant writing. I think that grant writing falls into intergovernmental relationships. Grantsmanship is what I said,
Gotcha.
representing the municipality. And I have that under the manager's category. And again, you know, these are imprecise and generalizations. As you know, elected officials oftentimes prepare grant applications. I think it's a recipe for burnout, because only you can be the elected and political leaders of your town, where a lot of people can prepare grant applications. But in a lot of places, elected officials do prepare them. I don't think that that's that keeps all the, you know, your Verona, you get a good rowing reference. All the oars are not cutting through the water as efficiently as they possibly could when that happens, but it does happen. People can get grants completed that way.
Thank you. The other question I was going to ask is, what I'm maybe wondering if the elephant in the room is, from your description, it seems to imply that a secretary would not fall into as large of a salary category as a manager. I was wondering if, from your experience, you could just kind of ballpark typical ranges for each of the positions.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable giving you an actual dollar range, but you're correct. The manager's positions pay more generally than secretary positions.
Thank you.
And you have access to that information as well through ALOM.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, who else has questions or comments about where we're at right now?
I guess the one concern I would have is that we do need, I mean, when we started down this whole thing, you know, is to have someone there, to also be able to manage the staff that's there. And I don't think we have that. Well, we're not going to have that with the secretary. I mean, that person will not be overseeing any of the department heads. And it sounds like it would still fall back onto us for that particular part.
Yeah, I mean, typically in a borough, you know, the chain of command there for the police is through the police chief to the mayor. And in your case, you really only have one department beyond that, which is DPW. your code enforcement is now outsourced as your finance is. So you have an administrative department for sure that does important stuff. You know, generally speaking, I have not seen police report through a chain of command through a manager unless that's explicitly identified in the charter or the organizational chart. Now, I worked at O'Hara, as you know, and that was a home rule community, and we did have the manager in charge of all personnel, including the police, public works, zoning and code enforcement. We had a finance department. So I guess the question I would ask you to ask yourselves is how much supervision is required? And only you can answer that.
Okay.
Susan, I have a question. And yes, it's very understandable that a manager would make more money than a secretary. That's a given to me. My question is, Robert Morris University, they put out into the business world some very professional people, especially now that they've become a full-fledged university. Would it be wise for us to go to Robert Morris University and see if they have some people that would be qualified for municipal work?
Yeah, I left that.
Go to
I'm
them?
Yeah, sorry, Sylvia, I didn't mean to talk over you. I did leave that out. I want to really encourage you to market this position, dealing with that, you know, that generational shift and that scarcity, that demand for talent anyhow. So yeah, you're not just going to run an ad, you're going to actively reach out to career services at Robert Morris, at Pitt, at CMU, at, you know, as many possible places as you can. You know, and put it on LinkedIn and have a good looking piece that says, hey, here's a great, exciting opportunity, regardless of what the job is. You know, if someone graduates with a business degree, Sylvia, I think they can be easily trained to become a borough secretary. There's a lot of business-like functions there. I think some additional training would probably be in the offing. There is, at least historically, Municipal Secretaries Institute out of Shippensburg University. They used to run summer, conferences. I don't know if they still do. That was used to round out people's resumes who came from a non-traditional public administration background. But generally speaking, you know, I think the difference that business majors struggle versus political science majors, if you will, is this unique environment that is governance, right? You know, I always make the joke about my husband one time when I came home from a long day, and he said, "How was your day?" And I proceeded to tell him a whole host of dramatic stories about things that happened at the township. And we were going to do this. And then this lady came in and she wanted that. And then this happened. And then there was a sinkhole. And there's was that. And then I was finally all done. And he works for FedEx. And I took a breath and I went, "How was your day?" And, you know, he works for this big multinational company. And he said, "Much easier than yours. All I had to do was deliver more packages than UPS." You know, that was what he said. And that is true. That's where you struggle, I think, when you don't come from a public administration background. It can be learned, but there's a steep learning curve there. The environment is very different.
Right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, who else? Who haven't we heard from? Ray, you have any comments or questions? Janet? So,
No, I just think, like I said in the exec session, we just need to, now that we've seen this, we just need to start moving on stuff.
Do you have a point of view, Ray, in terms of this manager or secretary position?
We need to get someone in the office. Depending on how these numbers all break down, once we get, I mean, I know we have a final tally, but you know, we got to sit down and figure out what we want.
I believe that's what we're doing right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, David, you want to restate what your budget is for this year, and while you're looking that up, I also want you to think to the future, because I know it's not popular to say you are going to need to raise taxes, but if you don't raise taxes, you're going to be cutting significantly in subsequent years just to balance the budget. Remember, that's not to just make your payment to the sewer fund, but to balance your budget. And hopefully you will be able to, rebalance your revenues so that your sewer rates could possibly be adjusted and so on, so that your residents experience, as much efficiency and savings as possible, that they're not overcharged. But you are underfunding your current revenue. Based on your historical patterns. And that's what we do in finance. We have a rule that says don't plug your budget. Look at your history. That's most typical of what you're going to do in the future. So you can't just set aspirational tax rates. You can't just say, well, we wish it would be this amount. Like, if it snows a lot and you're out plowing and you have a lot of overtime, that's not going to care that you wish that it was otherwise. Your history is your best guide. And, for you guys, that's probably about $200,000 you're going to need to raise. Now, I would say that's one time, because that's going to go, you don't have to do that every year for the next 3 years, right? Because that's going to roll forward, but that is the amount of your revenues being under your expenditures. So Dave, that was just filler while I waited for New York in the booth to come back with the update.
You're referring to the budget amount for
Yes.
borough and admin. So we have in the budget $94,544. That's for the whole year. We've spent about a little over 15,000 on that, on those items, and that leaves us with $79,456 remaining for the rest of this year. So I do think, Susan had a good point about looking to future years, and this isn't just a cost that we're going to incur this year. It's going to be for years to come, and we also need to think about the, not that we're going to set it tonight, but the minimum fund balance that we want to target for future years and programming that into the budget. So anyway, I think so. Yeah. Does anyone have questions about the budget that we have available for that?
I have a question. If I could jump in there, are you offering benefits as well for this position?
We had budgeted that, I believe, in the old budget that Jerry put together. The 70,000 for a full-time borough manager was just the salary, and there was other monies included in there somewhere for things like medical insurance and things like that. Couldn't find that right now.
Okay, just curious.
In a minute, but I believe he mentioned at the time that was included in the budget. So that would increase how much we have available, I guess, is what you're getting. I mean, how much we would need to spend on a yearly basis is your point.
That's right. That's your commitment, right? I mean, and that's part of it too, why we're having this discussion, hopefully, is that, you all expressed to me your desire to get someone who will stick with the borough for some period of time. How do you put together, a package between the work that they do and the role that they have and the practical things like their pay and benefits? That's your question.
I guess I like to see the secretary sort of being able to morph into something in the future too, just going on those lines that as they learn more. And with their budget situation, seems like this would probably be the best thing to do, is start small and end up big.
I think that's an interesting idea. And I think with a very, intentional eye for future talent during the search, that's something that could make a job more attractive. Someone with lower levels of experience, but ambitions and aspirations to do more could certainly cut their teeth and have a great experience working in Verona. And then as they mature in season, and I don't mean that in terms of age, I mean that in terms of experience, you could add more executive capability responsibilities onto their plate. So that is a compromise that you might want to consider.
It sounds like a great idea, Susan. I like that.
Hey, it was
So-
Mike's idea.
Or I mean, Mike, actually it was Mike's and you were agreeing. Mike, good idea. Sorry, I didn't mean to discredit you.
I'm
No,
teasing
we're
you,
all
Zoe.
team players here. It's
Yes,
everybody.
that's right.
Everybody, nobody.
That's right.
That's right. But it is a good idea. Thank you, Mike.
But it takes a real intentional effort on behalf of the board, and you guys serve at the pleasure of voters. So you'd be out there championing this as in the best interests of Verona as well, to make that possible for that kind of growth environment. Organizations, you're not hiring positions anymore, you're hiring people. And people with potential. That's exactly what my coaching and consulting practice is about, is that I know we're kind of riding this edge between this generational shift. There isn't there isn't the competition for the jobs that there once was, but there's also not the pool of applicants to create that competition. So how do you hire the right person with the right temperament and potential and cultivate that, I think, is the challenge for learning organizations. You're a learning organization more than a doing organization. I know you guys love to do. Your committees are all about let's get stuff done. And I admire that, because that is true volunteerism. It's not always the best use of council time, though. Setting policy and, a vision is a lot at times, again, it's the unique thing that only elected officials can do. You can find people to do grant applications and manage projects and, and do a lot of different things. But, only you can speak on behalf of the voters of Verona, and that's powerful and important.
I think, I agree with Mike's sentiment that, to maybe start the idea of starting small and having room for someone to grow and season and mature into the, maybe taking on more responsibilities and roles down the road. I do think in the past, and this is just my observation, maybe before my time on council, I think things, things have changed a lot since I started, but in the past, it seemed like the committee heads kind of ran different aspects of the borough government. For instance, the head of the chair of the Public Works Committee was basically running the street department, and I do think we need to get away from that sort of thing and more towards having a skilled professional, or and that could include someone with the right balance of education experience, even if they are someone that has room to grow, who can cover these aspects of management or just administration of the borough responsibility, so that the council can really focus on policy and strategy and long-term things. And I think it would help us to not always have that professional in there that would be able to run with things day to day and allow us to focus on less on putting out fires that come up each day and more on long-term planning, whether it's capital or budgeting or anything else, comprehensive plan. Even that's something that they might work on, but that's my thought. I think that's maybe a good approach. I don't know if that would look like hiring a secretary with potential to turn into a manager role, or or I think, Mike, did you mention secretary slash manager? Did I imagine that, or did you say that?
Well, no, I was thinking a secretary that could possibly turn into a manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
So I'm going to chime in here for a minute. I think there've been several ideas that are good ideas. This is just my personal experience right now. Given what Dave Matlin just said, I would prefer to have someone who can fill a lot of those gaps that a secretary wouldn't necessarily be able to do in the beginning. Personally, I could, and so there's that aspect of it. Maybe someone really young coming out of school who's hungry, like you had mentioned, Susan, and maybe they don't know all those things, but maybe they have the education, recent education. I know we had one person that applied that might fit that bill. But I don't particularly want to continue having us as a council needing to be so involved in the day-to-day or even the bigger responsibility running smoothly. At the same time, this thought occurred to me that, and this might not be a possibility, but could we put out some type of advertising for both and see what we get? And then go, maybe we get someone who's a secretary who's on the high end of knowing a lot. And they're halfway morphed into a manager type situation and are having ongoing education. So that, thinking about it in that way, and then, or a borough manager who's younger and less experienced, but clearly is very able to learn quickly and take on new, more and more responsibility and grow into the job. So that's where I'm going a little bit with that. And then I just want to say out loud, everything you said, Susan, about tweaking the job description. I do love the example that you sent us. Getting all of council involved. What were some of the other things? Oh, marketing. Those are all great ideas. I personally wouldn't really know how to do all of those things myself. And I don't know how council feels about how we would get all of your recommendations accomplished. Short of continuing your consultancy here.
Well,
I can't do it.
well, a couple of
I'm just
things.
gonna be honest, yeah.
So if I can answer a couple of those things, it should be your expectation for whether it's a manager or a borough secretary that council does not have to be involved in the level that it is involved in right now. Council has been in crisis management largely because of the financial situation, because finance is the bedrock of all management and administration. These aren't, this wasn't just like little things that you were dealing with. This was a pretty big deal to make that shift as quickly as you did, to get the funds correctly recorded in your general ledger, to have regular reporting that helps you keep an eye on that stuff. That was big. It's a fair expectation for either job that they will handle what you've been handling. In terms of, how do you tweak the job description and so on, you already have a model that you can work off of. I would suggest you work off of that model and add in maybe, as opposed to taking the existing one and subtracting out, because the existing one has so much in it that yeah, I think it should express what you want more so than like, should we leave this in or out? Job descriptions are a work in progress. That's the other reason why I'm troubled a little bit by the amendment to the ordinance to the manager's position. If I'm giving advice, you guys got to fix that. A manager is going to want a manager ordinance. They're not going to want a job description that can be changed as easily as that can be. But even having a manager's ordinance, you can also have a manager's job description that ebbs and flows over time, right? So it's a less binding document, if you will. So I think if you take what you have and you add, that would be an easy way to tweak. The decision tonight as to whether a manager or a secretary that you want will shape that. And then, it's a matter of advertising and scheduling and promoting and conducting those interviews. But I think that you need to set the course that you want to go on. I would discourage you from saying, what can we get, right? Because that's mushy. That doesn't really fulfill the councilmanic role of what I was saying. You guys you chart the course, right? You chart the course. That's my suggestion to you.
Okay, well, it was a wild thought.
Yeah.
I'm not wed to it.
And one other thing, the council rules, the adjusting the committees to be more structured, more advisory. In my opinion, those go part and parcel with hiring a manager or a secretary. Though that lifts the burden off of a lot of it too. Tweak that agenda to maybe make those changes that I've suggested. Hey, I have so few friends that I can say, would you like to read the rules for borough X and borough Y? And you guys are like, yes, I want to read that. No one comes around at holidays and says, Aunt Sue, would you read us the council rules for Edgewood Borough to me? I don't understand why. But you guys would be into that, right? So spend some time and saying, yeah, I'd like to do it that way, right? And it's a work in progress. It's like the Constitution. It's a living, breathing document, but get your best effort down so that you got, like I said, you got those oars in, you're cutting through the water consistently. I would not separate those. I wouldn't be like, oh, we're so busy hiring a manager, we don't have time to do that. I would address those governance things concurrent with the search for the manager and or secretary. And what I'm hearing is you have a proposal on the table. I don't know if that's true, but for a way to go, and you were asking around. That's what I heard. Just to be mindful of the clock. It's 9:14.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I don't know. According to what your presentation was tonight, I'm very concerned about the many, many things that maybe a borough secretary would not be able to do. And it feels like a large gap to me. But, that's just one person's opinion. I wonder what some other people's thoughts might be.
I'm thinking if we go with the borough secretary, the higher end of a borough secretary that has some more experience in things, that could keep our costs down for a year maybe or so long to work on this budget and this deficit that can do what we need to be done. That's just my 2 cents worth.
That's what I'm thinking as well. I'm thinking, a higher end on the secretary that can, like we said, can grow into that manager position. I don't see we actually have to have 2 physical people in that, as a secretary and a manager, 2 different people. I think if we go on the higher end, somebody that's, we see the potential, through our interviewing process that has that to go. I mean, if it comes up that we can have somebody, as a manager, but also do those secretary duties as well. That's what I'm thinking, but
Well, I don't know that we can have this final decision tonight. Can we? Given that it's 9:15.
I mean, I think it sounded like we're hearing good feedback on the idea of looking to advertise for a borough secretary. If we're all in agreement on that, we could work on getting starting to figure out what that job description or advertisement would look like. I do think.
And how much we're willing to pay.
Mhm.
Probably depends on what kind of qualifications they have too.
Yeah, real quick, I forgot to mention that I did look up, there should be in the budget, I believe there is in the budget for healthcare insurance, and federal, FICA tax for, what was to go along with the borough manager, line item that was included for this year. This is going back to December or November of last year, but I don't know the amount of FICA tax that was added, but it was $12,000 a year in health insurance under the 401-196 line. Because I know someone asked about benefits, so just to keep that in mind.
If we get someone who is partially retired, they may not need the benefits, Dave. What is your thought on that? A lot of times they have their own benefits. I know if you get someone young, of course, they're going to want a full benefit package. And you actually can't blame them.
That's
Not
something-
necessarily, because if they're married and their partner has benefits, sometimes it's not as important. Sorry to cut you off, Mike.
No, that's a good point. I mean, I think
No,
it's
that's
something that we can
true.
negotiate at that point. That's when we look at the salaries and everything.
That's true too.
Well, I think from an advertising or a candidate search, I think we need to know what we're offering, and then each when we get down to the hiring and the on a specific candidate, that there will be some discussion of exactly what the salary and benefits are. But I think to have a at least a ceiling or know what we're offering in terms of benefits is good to have that in mind right off the bat.
Yeah, I think it's possibly a chicken, egg, horse cart kind of situation. I don't think that we can, look for people and then say, well, you have these skills, so we'll give you this amount of salary and these benefits.
Well, could we
No,
put,
I don't think it's, I think you can have, I mean, you could still have the skills that you're looking for. And you said benefits are available. I mean, I was hired as like what Sylvia said. I got a higher salary because I didn't take the benefits. So there's sort of it's kind of same thing what Dave says. We can have some sort of ceiling of what we're looking for, but I think when it comes down to the hiring, that's going to be sort of more of a negotiation point.
Right, that's
could
true.
we put a motion on the floor and then to hire a secretary and form a committee and come up with all that while we're getting the job description squared away? I mean,
Well, I think that one of the recommendations that Susan was presenting to us a bit ago was to find a way to involve the entire council and not do this by committee. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, and more importantly, I want to encourage you to set your sights on what you want, right? And then if they turn down benefits and you're able to negotiate higher pay, and that'll all take place during the the final steps when you have the candidate, right? I think what's most important is for you to be thinking about the course of action you want the borough to take the next couple of years. And I am concerned about the remaining budget that you have this year. I am concerned about whether or not that tax increase is going to happen. I am concerned that you're going to maintain the discipline to put $100,000 in your sewer fund every year for the next 5 years. And again, please don't misunderstand me. I don't mean you as individuals. I mean sort of the royal you of Verona Borough, right? I mean, these organizations, local governments, that self-governance can sometimes be a real pain in the neck, right? I mean, it's on you to do these things. Ideally, if you could land a candidate that would grow with you, maybe that's a good solution. Again, I think there are some candidates that could be hired as a secretary that just have great executive ability, but because of whatever came, before in life, maybe they didn't take that route, right? But it's possible. You're looking, again, you're hiring a person. You're hiring not a position, you're hiring a person, and you're looking for a person, but you got to scope out the job that you want to hire for before you start to look for that person, is my advice to you.
Yep. So I guess like what Ray said, we should probably agree on the way we're going to go. Should we put a motion out that we're going to go for a secretary and then formulate the job descriptions and ads as we go on?
I mean, Nancy, I had sent to you a second job description as well. That maybe that would be a starting point. That was the assistant. I called it the assistant borough secretary, only because a manager has to have the secretary duties under their job description in that particular sample. But maybe that's a start.
Yeah, these were the samples you sent in the last couple days.
That's
not
right.
The one from Churchill. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just keep in mind, guys, I've never done any of this before, so I'm doing the best I can. Is this how we proceed? Do we make a motion to hire a secretary and then figure out how we're gonna all get together and formulate a job description and figure out the benefits and the salary and the this and that? I mean, I just honestly, I don't know.
Tonight.
Yeah, sorry. So my suggestion would be, yeah, you make that motion, and then your meeting in 2 weeks, you'll have a draft of the position description and add, and you'll be ready to, pull the trigger on that. What I would suggest is that, comments be taken on a draft, right? Not sort of committee work, but a draft go out there and through, everybody can either submit written comments or take a piece of paper and with pencil in the margins, write what they think, and all that gets collected and woven in to that job description.
We could do a Google document.
You could do a Google Docs, that's right.
Which I'm just learning about, but if people can't do it, we can find another way. Okay, let's do that, because we do need to move on, I think, at this point. Who wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we move forward with a secretary position.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, I have a first by Mike Forbeck, second by Ray Suchovich. Any other questions or comments about this right now? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Well, any opposed? Okay, motion passes. I do want it to not be done with just part of council. I am very limited in my scope of knowledge about Google Docs, but I will give it my best. And we'll start with some of the examples that Susan had given to us, and we'll work on this for 2 weeks from now. Does that sound like a plan, everybody?
Yeah, we could do it in Google Docs, and if anyone needs, can't access Google Docs, I'd be glad to either print it out or send, a PDF or something else to your email, to review it and mark it up, and then, collect all the comments and put it back into the original Google Doc.
Great, thanks, Dave. And thank you, Susan, for bearing with us as you continue to educate us. Thank you so much.
Sure. And Nancy, can I suggest also what gets distributed to council is the Edgewood and Plum rules and a sample agenda, like I said, with the advisory reports at the top and the action under new business to sort of contemplate, those governance enhancements.
Okay.
And you'd be ready to adopt those potentially, in a couple of weeks as well to do that in lockstep.
Okay, we'll give it the good old college try. I'll do as much as I can.
And I will print my slides to a PDF and send them out to you, but it might not be till tomorrow. So.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Okay, wonderful discussion. Thank you, everybody. Moving on. So since we talked about this last time, the numbers of the COVID cases have been starting to decrease due to increased outdoor activity, due to better weather, due to increased vaccinations, so on and so forth. So I've always said that I want to open the chamber when we can do a hybrid meeting and live stream our meetings. And I think that we may have found a way through the help of Vince Floda and Tim Long. And I'd like to propose, after we hear from them for like a couple minutes on how they would do this, that we open the chamber starting May 1st for limited use of Verona groups only, which would be chamber, council, history, whatever is associated with the borough, not outside groups, just borough groups. So Vince or Tim, can you guys unmute and just share with everybody your thoughts about how to do that?
Yes, we just tested it earlier today, and whoever has the Zoom meeting on their laptop should be able to plug their laptop right into the HD outlet in the council chambers. And then the screen from the laptop will be shown on the projector in the council chambers. We have a wide angle camera that could also be hooked up via USB into the laptop. And then that camera can be set on a tripod aiming at the council desk. So the people that are on the Zoom meeting that aren't in attendance at council chambers will see the live camera feed that would show the whole desk of chamber. So whoever is running the Zoom meeting will just have to select external camera source instead of using their laptop's camera.
Mm-hmm. So people who are into that kind of thing, like Trish and Dave and Mike, does that all make sense to you guys? Does that sound doable?
Yeah, Vince, how does the camera that you have plug into the laptop?
USB.
Oh, okay, USB. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a USB line, and then we would probably just put a USB extender on it and set it up somewhere. It has a wide angle lens, so it probably doesn't have to be too far away from the, but if we wanted to sit it like on a tripod in the back corner, like where Donald Wharf used to sit, we could do that too. We just would have to have a long enough USB cord.
Now, how would would this setup, would it play the audio from people on Zoom in council chambers?
You could set it up to where it would play it through the projector.
Oh, okay, does the projector have a speaker?
Yeah, it has it's a small external speaker.
Okay. And then would it take in from that HDMI, would that take in the audio from the microphones on the dais?
I believe it should.
Sorry, what's that?
I said I believe it should, but if not, the microphone and the camera is pretty. It's pretty good, and I mean, you guys still have the microphones hooked up in council, so it should pick it up.
Okay. 'Cause I
So
know-
those microphone, oh, sorry.
It'll
Go
just
ahead,
be
Dave.
like, the sound would just be comparable to when Donald would tape the council meetings, and then, I
Yeah,
mean, that was the only sound, the only microphone he had for those was the one on the camera.
Yeah, I know
And-
for his camera, it had to plug in to the RCA jacks. I don't know if the HDMI, if that has audio pass through as well, but I'd be glad to come
Yeah,
down
it's,
sometime and test it out with my laptop.
Yeah, it should, because that's how we watch you can just plug the camera right in and the sound transfers through it, so.
Okay, yeah, that's fine then.
yeah, so maybe Dave and Vince and Tim can go, test it out. But
He's gonna be at the walkthrough on Saturday.
the rehearsal for the 150th, yeah. So my idea with proposing to open the chamber is also with all the protocol that we had outlined several months ago, which means people coming in there for a meeting would have their temperature taken, they would fill out the form that I have many copies of there ready to go. And wear masks and socially distance where appropriate. So given, we'll assume that the sound and the streaming is going to get worked out. Unless anybody has any more concerns or questions about it, I'll take a motion to open the chamber with those criteria being met.
Make a motion to open the chamber with the criteria.
I'll
Okay.
second it.
Second, first by Mr. Forbeck, second by Mr. Suchovich. Any other questions or comments?
I just do want to say one thing. We will test during the rehearsal or the walkthrough on Saturday. We will bring a laptop up, go into council chambers, plug it in, and give it a small test then. So if you're there, Dave, then we could go and walk.
Just so
Yeah.
everybody knows, you will not be using the audio from the camera. You will still be using the audio from your laptop. So you could literally reroute all the microphones through your laptop so that when people talk, that it'll still go right through your laptop. Everybody on there will hear everybody, and you will be able to hear everybody through the speaker on the projector and your computer.
And I guess it's going to be recorded through Zoom.
Yeah, it'll still, as long as Dave has it set up to record, it's gonna record. It'll just record that camera's view and everybody else's stuff.
There is that, but if we are meeting in the chamber, all those little microphones and the one that goes on the podium for public comment are directly wired in to a soundboard that's back in the little room back there. And you put a memory card in there and it records it internally, more internally than just, that's what those microphones, they're not so much for amplification as they are for recording the meeting, for listening to that memory card when the person is doing the minutes.
Yeah, I understand. You can also hook that board into the computer so that the people can hear each individual person on
Yep.
the chamber without them having to be right next to Dave and his
Yep.
computer.
I get it. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that about the microphones. Thanks, Tim and Vince and
I do
Dave.
understand what Dave's saying. That would be, if there is interference because of the laptops being in close proximity to each other, then we would have another option of everybody muting their laptops and just using the sound through the video camera.
Yeah, if we have more than one, which I was not thinking we would need to have more than one, But if people want to bring their tablet, you got to bring headphones and plug them in, and that stops the echo. Yeah, okay, great.
I'm sure we can work through it.
Yeah, okay. So any other questions or comments?
Yeah, did you say that this was just gonna be for borough? Or what groups were going to be using this?
Any group associated with the borough is my thought about it. I just didn't want it to have like outside groups, you know, borough council, borough chamber, historical society, you know, what other I guess the 150th group could meet there. I don't know. Do people have thoughts about where to draw that line? Because if people want to have a meeting in person and other people want to have access to it by live streaming, then we have to be able to set up this system. There is a laptop down there that I have gotten to work. So it doesn't have to be someone's personal laptop to make it work.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns?
Madam President, I just didn't recall an actual protocol for visitor use, only the protocol we did for employees. So is there a separate protocol, or are you referring to, I think you had a clipboard with like a waiver?
Yeah, I believe back when, I don't know, a long time ago, when I was not, maybe when I wasn't president, maybe when I was, I can't remember. You actually, Trish, sent a thing, and we took that as an example and expanded it, made a questionnaire, and it would be for whenever we would open the chamber. And we have a questionnaire, it's short and sweet, it's like 3 questions. You record your temperature. We have all kinds of hand sanitizer. We got extra hand sanitizer. We got the thermometer thing for your forehead, and made up a questionnaire. And then we decided to wait because the numbers were increasing. So I think it can work. We have flipboards, we got pens, people can come in, fill it out. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. We'll go back and find that protocol. Thank you. The only other thing I have on my list is the flag project with the Rotary Club. And I believe some work was done on that yesterday. And I don't have the details, but I think Vince and possibly Tim were there. I don't know. Do you guys want to just give a very, very brief update on how that's going?
I'm sorry, were we talking about the
The flag
flags?
project with the Rotary, yeah, with Don Stoner.
Yeah, yesterday, me and Don Stoner and Tim and Karen Brooks and Mr. Stoner's wife, we marked 44 locations for the memorial flags for the Rotary project. And if you drive by the pavilion at Railroad Park, you'll see little red flags sticking out of the ground. We also put water-based marking paint at the base of the flags in case any of the flags ended up missing or taken or whatever. The next steps are Dawn called PA One Call today for them to check where the utility lines are when the pavilion was installed. And what Dawn found out is PA One Call does not know where the borough placed the utilities when the pavilion was constructed. So I would recommend that, I believe, did Senate Engineering, were they involved in building that pavilion?
Yeah.
So
Senate
I-
Engineering should have all that information. They're the ones that drew the blueprints up and what have you. When Larry Seiler was here, I'm sure they have all that information.
Okay, so I would recommend that the next steps would be that we contact Matt and ask him if he can get the blueprints for the pavilion and the light posts and all the electric and water lines that are run at Railroad Park, because they will need to be submitted to PA One Call so they could have them on record for future projects at that park. And then once we can verify that and the flag locations are over any utility lines or water lines, then we could move ahead with installing the sleeves in the ground. And we'll have to schedule a time that's convenient for both AJ and Dawn to be there at the same time. So AJ can be there when Dawn starts installing the sleeves, so he can approve that they're down low enough that they won't interfere with the lawnmower or anything like that. But this all, Rotary Club would like to try to have this done before Memorial Day. So time is of the essence.
Mike, would you be able to
Yeah.
contact Matt about all that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. That's why I'll,
Great.
It's good to
thank
know that
you.
they probably have the blueprints and it should be a
Yep.
quick fix.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
yep.
cool. Thank
I will
you.
notify Dawn that we're working on it, and I'll keep them posted.
Thank you very much.
That's all I have right now until we find out more information.
Okay.
Thank
All right, thanks. All right, that is it for me. We're moving on to Mike Forbeck.
Okay, we still awake?
Yeah.
So our first, number one, the stop signs, we kind of talked about that already. I mean, all the stop signs have been installed, so no further on that. And we talked about the Maple Street issue. The second issue is about the paper recycling. I sent a note out to everybody that they were overflowing. There was mess all over the place. It was cleaned up. I tried to call Royal Oak, could not get a hold of them. The health department tried to get a hold of them. They did an inspection of it, but lo and behold, the bins were finally collected sometime between Friday and Saturday. So that's nice, but I think we really should move to that other company, the local company, that Stanson Paper. We were going to do that last year and kind of fell by the wayside. So if council's okay, I'll continue to pursue that and get a quote. Well, it's not going to be a quote. It's going to be a no cost contract for that. That's all right.
Yeah, if my memory serves, which who knows, but anyway, I do think we approved to have Stanson whenever you brought this up before. Does anybody else remember that?
I'm pretty sure we did too.
Yeah. I
Okay.
thought
Okay,
yeah,
good.
when Mike brought it up, we agreed to look, proceed.
Yeah, and it's a no-cost contract. That's the best kind.
Right. They just said the Rural Oak has to be contacted and tell them to remove their bins and when Stanson comes in. I tried to contact Stanson today a couple times and it just went to busy signal. So I'll follow up on that lead and finish with that. The third issue is on about the recycling report. We did get all the numbers together for our Allegheny County recycling. We were only a month late, which was not bad, like a lot better than what we've done in years past. But it was like gathering all those numbers and including the plastic film that Rhea had collected. That's also part of our numbers that we put into the report. That was sent in today. We will be filing for an application for the 904 grant that's due in December, but certainly my idea is that I'll start putting that together so that we can have that submitted well ahead of December so we can get some money for that. Ballpark figure right now, I just took a look at the number of tons we recycled last year. We're probably looking at $2,000 or $3,000 grant for that. So hopefully that works out. The final issue, and probably the biggest one I wanted to bring up, is dealing with the street sweeper. AJ informed us that the sweeper is really broken. They got an estimate for repairs. It's going to cost about $6,000 for parts and labors to repair this sweeper. That's one part of the story, and I want to talk about sweeping it second. So I guess along with that, the idea that having is because of the wear and tear on the sweeper, maybe we don't need to have a sweeping done every week. Maybe we can move this to every month or every other month, even months one side of the street, odd months the other side of the street. It'll save on wear and tear in the sweeper, to save amount of material that we're collecting because we won't have to pay for the waste disposal for all that. And so it's kind of twofold here. One is I think we need to repair the sweeper, in my opinion, and we need approval to allow the $6,000 to pay for that sweeper. And the second part is I think we really need to think about decreasing the amount of days that we do sweep and make it maybe a month process. So I'm up for a discussion on it, all those.
Okay, can we break it down though and just deal with the repair of the street sweeper first? And the money precisely, so everybody knows, is $6,028.03 to do everything that needs to be done. And at first, AJ mentioned to me, like, you know, maybe there's a higher priority for this, that, and the other thing. But talking about it more, it's like, just do the whole thing. It'll last longer. It'll run better. It'll clean up the stuff that's there better. So let's just deal with that aspect of it. I personally would, there it is, 602803. Would take a motion to go ahead and spend this money to repair the street sweeper, and it'll come out of the DPW budget line item.
I'll make that motion, Mr. President.
Okay, first by Mr. Suchovich.
I'll second that. I'm sorry, I thought someone else did, maybe, but.
Okay, thank you. Second by Mr. Matlin. Any other questions or concerns about repairing our street sweeper? Mr. Mayor, do you have a comment about that?
No, I agree. I agree that the sweeper should be fixed for that amount, because the new one, you're probably looking at starting price at about 90,000 and up for a new one. But keep in mind, if Mike, you had said that you would like to move it every other week.
Okay, hold
or
on,
once
hold
a
on,
month.
hold on,
We would
Mayor,
have to
Mayor,
change.
stop, time out. We just need to deal with the motion that's on the floor right now, and then we will move into a discussion about when we're gonna street sweep, okay?
Sure.
Okay.
I do have some concerns. I assume there's no other more economical solutions given our financial situation, such as borrowing one from neighboring communities, or you mentioned there was another system of repairs, but this one was the longest lasting. Was there like a quick fix we can do just to get us through this year, and then next year we can look at doing the additional repairs, or any other alternatives to paying this much right now?
Well,
I know from my line of work, when I worked with the Turnpike, when they tear these sweepers down and start working on them, if we would do it in segments, it would cost you more labor to take it back next year and piecemeal it. It's better, we found it's better just to get it done, bite the bullet and have it done. My
The
2 cents worth.
labor and parts are almost the same. It's $2,800 for labor and about $3,200 for parts.
And the other aspect of it that is my understanding is, if you fix everything that's wrong with it now, then going forward for next year and the year after and the year after, it will stay functional, because they will have fixed all of the different things that, you know, need to be done, like the, let's see here, the pickup head, there's an exhaust manifold leak, which is one of the things that's a problem, a major problem. The inlet scroll, I know this may not have much meaning to people, but the right gutter broom disc is loose, and that's a big part of the repair. And without that, it just doesn't pick anything up. So there's no point in doing street sweeping if it's not picking stuff up. So I get your concern, Trish, and I tried with AJ to see, and we tried to break it down, but you know, like these guys are saying, in the long run, you end up spending more, and it spends more time in the shop, and we just get it done and average it over the next 5 years, and hopefully it doesn't end up to be that much.
How
So,
long is it gonna be in the shop, Nancy?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'll ask AJ
Mike.
tomorrow.
Mike, do
Yeah.
you know, I know some of these things that it lists the cause as regular maintenance. Are these like regular PM preventative maintenance items that are on a tip, you know, on some kind of schedule? You know?
I don't know, Dave. I'm just looking real quick.
What?
I mean, it's,
Yeah, I guess, and that's okay if you don't. I was just curious. I guess what I'm getting at is, it seems like we've had the sweeper in the shop, at least in the last few years. I remember at least 2 other times, it seems like. So I don't know if these are, you know, how much of this is preventable maintenance and how much of it is, you know, unexpected things that crop up that, you know, you just got to deal with. So I guess for one, I think we need to be more deliberate going forward on budgeting. You know, if we know that each year the sweeper is going to need to be in the shop for $2,000 to, you know, I don't know,
To do regular maintenance.
change the oil or replace
Yeah.
brushes or something, then we should be
Yeah.
programming that as part of the budget.
that's a good point.
But and if there are regular, you know, inspections or maintenance that can be done to hopefully prevent bigger repairs down the road, I think we need to do that. If there's, I don't know if the repair shop or the manufacturer has a, you know, a recommended maintenance interval like a vehicle, but that's something we could look at. I think
Real quick, it looks like about a third of the cost was regular maintenance.
Mhm.
I mean, just a ballparking it from the,
I mean, so if it, and I don't know if we have enough detail in the budget to know whether there was anything programmed this year for specifically for the sweeper maintenance, but if it's something that we've had to do in the past regularly, maybe every year, every 2 years, there's a good chance that you know, some of that regular maintenance stuff would be covered by our existing public works budget somewhere. So
Yeah. That's a good
I-
point, Dave.
Also, this isn't the type of thing we could get additional quotes, like the manufacturer is fixing it, I'm guessing.
My understanding is this is really the only place that does this kind of work. And they had to drive the street sweeper to like Mars, because
Fair
that's where
enough.
the place is. Yeah, Mars. And, you know, which I found an incredible thing was that they drove the street sweeper to Mars, PA. So,
Mars, PA, and not the planet.
yeah, no, not the planet.
That's out of this world, Dave.
Yeah.
Dun-dun-dun.
Yeah, I don't
Perseverance.
think there's nowhere else around the area that, you know, sort of going to Harrisburg or Philadelphia or, you know, whatever. So it's sort of a one-shot deal. It's under the threshold anyway for requiring us to get more bids, I believe. So we have a motion on the floor. First by Mr. Suchovich, second by Mr. Matlin. Any other questions or concerns? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm actually opposed. I know it sounds ridiculous, but as a member of Upper North, I just don't see the need for this, but that's fine.
Okay, so the motion passes with a vote of 6-1 with Trish voting nay. That's okay.
So let's go into the second part of this, and and probably that jumping right from what Trish was saying, is there a need really to have these roads swept every week?
Yeah,
or
I
every other
think
week?
Dave, the mayor, was going to talk about that when I
And-
cut him off.
and- I
Yeah.
mean, there's some of the things that we were talking about was, there's the signs that are up there that are, require you not to park on the two sides, one side on Wednesday, the other side on Tuesday. You can either do an enforcement discretion. I wouldn't want to go through and change every single sign. I mean, it could be just by, by our social media and broadcasting about this too. But I'm sorry,
think-
Mayor.
I don't think the signs say street sweeping. Do they?
I don't know, but I want to respect that the mayor had his hand up before and I stopped him from speaking. I'd like to allow him to speak now. And we can continue with other comments as well.
I agree with Mike, and that's what I was gonna say, that the signs would all have to be changed. They do say street sweeping, and they give the day and the time. And the chief asked me today about continuing street sweeping, with the net, ticketing, and I told him, no, hold off until further notice.
So I'd like to just throw in my 2 cents. Because I think it depends on where you live, how often your streets need to be swept. We got a mess down here in Lower Verona, wherever there are trees. We got tree frou-frou, whatever you want to call it, falling all over the place. And the roads are covered. And normally, this is a really important time for street sweeping to happen. Then, there's the fall where obviously when it gets really bad with the leaves, they have the leaf vac. But before and after that, they have the street sweeper that's cleaning up a lot of stuff. We can't have it only once a month. We need, at least I know on my street and other streets in Lower Verona, the stuff doesn't roll down the hill when it rains. And if it goes anywhere, it goes into the sewer system. So then when we would get a flood, it might plug it all up and then we have a worse flood. That's a possibility. Probably not, very often that would ever happen. But the other thing is, I believe the signs simply say no parking on this side of the street from one time to another. I don't think it says due to street sweeping, because the other reason that the signs are there are for snow plowing.
Yep.
And when it snows, then they know that on Tuesdays, the one side of the street is going to be clear for them to do the parking areas because all the cars have moved in. On Wednesdays, they can plow on that side and clear the parking areas on the Wednesday side of the street. So I hear what you're saying, Mike. I know it would be less wear and tear. If somebody wants to figure out a way to make it so that the parts of town that don't need swept can be less, but I'm telling you, down here in Lower Verona, we need our street swept every week.
Well, maybe that's something that we can look at, is that it could be by zone or areas or some sort of
Yeah.
compromise. That we
But
can-
in
we can
order
look
to
at.
do that, you would have to change, you could change the signs and say the second and fourth Tuesday and the second and fourth Wednesday in certain zones, like you say. But it would be an ordinance change to do that as well, I believe.
You wouldn't even really need to change the signs.
Yeah,
If you're not gonna send out a net to give tickets, then when they're sweeping, you wouldn't even have change the signs.
Well, that's what I was saying, enforcement discretion. you
Yeah.
know.
Well, I don't,
Yeah.
that sounds a little loosey-goosey to me.
It does,
well, I think you could still have the signs. You don't need to change them and still have a standing no parking and use it for snow emergency, snow plowing, if they need to, but also for leaves during the fall, for street sweeping. I do think that there are good chunks of this borough that do not need to be swept with the street sweeper every single week. And maybe there's some areas that need it more than others. I think that's maybe something to, policy change we could look at, or the DPW committee could come up with and make a recommendation to council. But I don't think changing the signs would be cumbersome. And what if we change it and it doesn't work out the way we expected, and then we have to change it back? I think we could leave the signs and just use the street sweeper yet less, save the wear and tear on it, save the noise, save the fuel costs, whatever. Just because we're not using the street sweeper doesn't mean we need to do anything with the signs.
So maybe this is something that we can bring back to the DPW committee and ordinance committee to discuss this a little bit further.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's hear back from the two committees, whenever, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, however long it takes. Okay, so is that it for you, Mr. Forbeck? Are you done?
Well, I have a whole lot of other items that I'm not going to bring up because it's late. No, I'm done.
That's very funny, huh? Okay. All right. Trish Rezek, Showalter, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. I will be short. The first item on my agenda is welcoming BIU. As a recap, we are outsourcing our building inspection services now to this firm, and they will also be helping us to cover many of our code enforcement related items. I forwarded all of you a resolution prepared by our own solicitor, Craig Alexander. This resolution will reflect a change in our rates to match what BIU is charging going forward. So I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and accept this resolution.
Okay, that's a first by Trish for the resolution. This is for the fee structure, is that correct? Yeah.
Correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Mr. Suchovich. Any other questions or comments about the fee resolution? Just so everyone knows, specifically, one thing to pinpoint is the occupancy inspection for an occupancy permit has been raised from $50 to $75 to cover our expenses. So the borough isn't paying 1/3 of every occupancy inspection that gets done.
Right.
So if we pass this resolution, we do need to find a way to get the word out to the town that if you're a landlord and everything, we're going to continue to get checks for $50, but anything dated after April 27th, it's going to have to be $75.
Nancy, we could put it in the newsletter. That'll win every residence.
Yeah, but that's a long time till that happens. That's July. We have requests coming in every day.
Yeah, well, that's going along with the permits. I mean, where are they getting the permits from? From the website or from the borough building or both?
That's a topic for another discussion when we're not trying to pass the ordinance.
Well, no.
I mean, the resolution.
Yeah, that's fine. All I'm getting at is that we can advertise the fee schedule along with wherever people pick up the permits.
Well, they have to get an
right?
inspection before they can get, you know what I'm saying?
With the application, he means, yeah.
Yeah, they have to get a permit application to get it inspected. Right?
Yes.
They can go through,
So-
they can get a hold of BIU.
Well, all I was saying is if we were to have these permits either in the borough building or on the website, we just put in a notice of the fee schedule and maybe a highlighted or special note that it's changed so that anyone coming to get a permit application is going to see that. And they're not going to be,
Generally, what I've been seeing in the office, and this just opens a whole big can of worms that we really don't have time to get into deeply tonight, is that a lot of these places have their own form and they fill out the form and they just send in the check. It's not a form that comes from the borough. This is the best I've been able to figure out thus far.
this is for what? Wait, are we talking about the same thing?
I think so, but I just would like, I would like to see if we could finish the motion and then get into this other discussion.
Okay,
Okay,
that's fine.
thanks. So in terms of the resolution for changing the fees, the motion on the floor, first by Trish, second by Ray. Any other questions or comments about the motion to adopt this new fee schedule? All those in favor, please say aye.
I,
I,
Aye. And those opposed? Okay, motion passes. So to answer your question, Dave, I can't look on the website right now. I don't know if we have an occupancy permit application on the website or not, or where these people are getting these permits. But I
We-
can tell you that we don't have a lien letter permit or application. And that I just figured out today. So,
We
yeah,
do have a occupancy permit application on the website for commercial and residential. It lists the fee, so that we'll just need to update the application, and we can post the fee schedule on the website, which is what a lot of municipalities do.
okay.
As far as the application itself, if I don't know if we're going to use the existing application we've used in the past, or if BIU has one, but it should be standardized. I don't think that we should just, I mean, if we're taking applications for a permit within the borough, everyone needs to be using the same standard form, period, or it gets
would be,
rejected.
it would be nice. All I'm telling you is the reality of what I've been seeing when I've been at the office, that's all.
I talked to the building inspector today about this exact thing, about an occupancy permit. And he told me to tell them to call the office, and all they gotta do is call the office and they'll get them all the info they need.
yeah, I've been saying that we're in a period of transition, but the goal, particularly with this firm, is that they're taking that administrative burden off of us in the long run. So Dave Matlin, I was going to suggest maybe we do, as you said, and upload the fee schedule to our website along with contact information for BIU, certainly their website, and then work towards having a standardized form that's largely administratively handled by BIU.
Yeah, that sounds good. I understand we're in transition. It may not all happen right away, but I just, I think if there's a new form and a new fee schedule, we just need to direct people to that. And I don't know. I don't see a problem with rejecting applications if they aren't following the protocol that's going to be established with BIU. So
I think,
Sure.
I think we gotta watch the fees too until we get it uploaded. Nancy says this is as of tonight, until we
Yeah.
get the fee schedule uploaded onto our website and the proper papers, we might have to leave it at 50 for right now till we get that all done.
well, Trish, if you have the fee
Agreed,
schedule electronically, if you
agreed,
want to send it
yes.
to me, I can post it to the website. Right away.
Yeah,
So
cool. I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's a good point, Ray. We probably just need to make a date and say as of, but we're gonna, well, Trish is
If they're
gonna
gonna get
address
that
this
done,
in a
if they're
minute.
gonna get that done soon, then it's not gonna be a major issue, I guess.
Yeah, well, Trish is gonna talk about BIU right here in a second, so maybe they can take care of it. Go ahead, Trish.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a good discussion. We could suggest a grace period of about 30 days, maybe starting June 1st, for example. I was going to mention next that BIU is going to be in Verona tomorrow. Anyone who's available is welcome to drop by and say hello. They'll be at our borough building a little bit after 1 o'clock. Also just wanted to mention that the ordinance committee met on 4/19 and BIU was there along with Harry. Last item is just about the AARP grant. We were able to submit that. So as a reminder, that's some complimentary funding towards the project with the Oakmont Verona Rotary to work on new welcome signs for our borough, along with a few other related items such as lighting. I want to thank Janet for securing a letter from Tony DeLuca to include with our application, which is a wonderful help. We'll be meeting with the Rotary soon to decide on next steps. Mayor Dave actually has been working with them, and I'm not sure if he has anything to add, but I think a survey to get some input from the public is going to be the next step for that project.
I have a question, Trish. This
Yes.
AARP
Yeah, if I
grant-
may, I did talk,
The AARP grant, does it have any kind of match?
No match.
Okay, great, thanks. Go ahead, Mayor.
if I may, on the signs, I did talk to Jeff Pepper yesterday, and they're gonna be leaning more towards replacing the old sign on the island there and putting it in that spot. And like you said, Trish, they are gonna send out a survey to see what people think of different style signs that they've come up with. That's all.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Dave. And that's all I have tonight, unless there's any other questions.
No, thank you. But if whoever has a TV on in the background could either turn it off or mute themselves or something. I'm not sure where that's coming from. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Mr. Suchovich.
Yeah, I had 3 things here, but the stop sign was taken care of. The building inspection was taken care of. The police sergeants contacted me, and we want to get started on negotiations. Their contract's up the end of the year. And I know that Trish is on the committee and Nancy, you're on the committee. So we'd like to get started just to see where we stand and get that going, so we're not in the last minute playing around with this. So they'd like to get going too. So that's all I have at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Ray, real quick, you said the police contract's up at the end of this year?
I believe December, they said, yeah.
Because
Seems
I thought it was
awfully
20
soon. Yeah.
I thought it was 2022. But maybe we can double check on that.
Okay, well, I'm going by what they said, Dave. I don't have a contract in front of me.
Yeah. I just pulled it up. It's December 31st, 2022.
December 31st of 22?
That's, I mean, unless they, that's the
Is that the
contract.
sergeants or is that the,
That's for the sergeants.
okay, I'll talk to them because I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk more offline, but that's the one that's in the borough building.
Okay,
It's the only
All right.
copy we could find. So,
I'll talk to them. Thank you.
yep.
All right, thanks. Next is Mrs. Lalbo.
Thank you, Madam President. First thing I have on my agenda is the bike derby. I spoke with the chief and with Sergeant Francos this past weekend, and they, with the recommendation, they also spoke with the mayor that they're going to hold off, possibly wait till fall when school starts to, maybe do a derby then. With the COVID still in the air and just trying to see, we had come up with different ideas, but right now it's going to be most likely in the fall, as long as there's not another spike going on with the COVID-19 going on. So won't be in the spring when school's up, but we'll have it in the fall. Also, park updates, pickleball benches have arrived and will soon be installed down at the pickleball court. They came this past week as well. The pavilion looks like it's moving along. I really don't have any updates on a time frame on when it will be completed, but it's nice seeing the frame and the roof, and it looks like things are coming together. Color choices have been made, and hopefully we'll have it done before June 1st. That would be great. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least is Mrs. Provenza.
Thank you, Madam President, and good evening, everyone. I hope everybody's still awake. It's been a long evening, but a good one. Newsletter. We're currently taking articles and ads for our summer issue, which is due on Tuesday, June 1st. And we would ask that you please get your articles and your ads in as soon as you can, because as soon as we get them, then we can get them to the printer. And so far, we've had the newsletter coming out much, much earlier. So we'll really appreciate if you can get your stuff into us early. The articles can go to Donald Wharf, our editor, at veronanewsroom@gmail.com. And I'll be happy to take ads at 412-828-7726. Chamber of Commerce, the dues, of course, were mailed out, and we're pleased to tell you that the dues continue to come in, which is very good. Chamber is currently working on the Charlie McKinley Scholarship for this year, and we have 6 students from Verona who have absolutely done a stellar performance at school. And the students are at 4.0 and above on their grade averages, which is really, really a commendable thing to tell. And the date of the car cruise is going to be Saturday, August 14th. I was given that information today. Historical Society, I did have a note here that we weren't sure when the borough building would be open, but Nancy has given the good word that we possibly will be opening very soon. So we look forward to that. Everybody has missed the Historical Society meetings, so that is good news. And if you want any other information, feel free to go to veronahistory.org. We occasionally have information on there. Twin Boroughs Ministries. The community dinner for this month will be held tomorrow from 4:30 to 6:30 at the Methodist Church. It will be a grab and go dinner, and it will be hosted by the St. Joseph's Women of Domain and the Verona Methodist Church. Again, many thanks to Shirley and her helpers. You are appreciated, girls. Also, I wanted to give a quick reminder, the Allegheny County senior discount for county taxes is still an available thing to people. The applications are on the rack down at our borough building. As you come in the door, the rack is to your left, and you can take an application there. And to qualify, you have to be 60 years of age or older and show proof of purchase. Also, the discount will be 30% off of your county taxes. And if you pay for those taxes before your discounted due date, you'll get another additional 2%. So that's a very nice savings. And also, be sure to file by June 30th. That is the very last day. And I'll give the ALOM to Nancy, since everybody's given their report. And I spoke with them, and they said they really had nothing new to tell, but they are busy working on the educational conference coming up in June. And that concludes my report. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'll be glad to answer. And I thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia.
You're welcome.
Okay, I guess, Mayor, did you have something you want to comment on Sylvia's report, or did you have something else you wanted to bring up?
No, just real quickly, I had something else that just came to my attention. I spoke with Shirley Davis and Rich Rosenberg in regards to the food distribution last week. They handed out over 300 boxes of food last week, and they're going to continue to do that. That's all I wanted to let people know, that it was very well responded, over 300 boxes of food.
Thank you. And before we go to COG, which probably the report is the meetings tomorrow night, Mike needs to come back on and present another item.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Thanks. We were going to vote on the Resnick Landscaping Services contract. This was sent out to everybody, I think, April 13th. And we were supposed to discuss it at our budget meeting, and I think things went in another direction. But this was for the general maintenance landscaping for the borough, for a total of $7,475. And I believe, Dave, this was still in the budget amendment, I think, or I think it was budgeted for 15,000. We budgeted for half of that or something like that.
Yeah, it was 13,000 originally, and then
Yeah.
we dropped it to 8. So yeah, there's still money in the budget for the 7,500 or so that Resnick was proposing.
And this includes mulching, weeding, all that
Yeah.
type of thing, correct?
Bi-weekly weed removal, mulching, trimming, spring cleanup, and it was supposed to start on May 1st.
Okay. So are you making a motion, Mike?
Making a motion to accept this proposal for $7,475 for the general landscape maintenance from Resnick Landscaping Services.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Loalbo. Any other questions or concerns?
Yeah, Mike, the only, I mean, I have no problem with their proposal. The only thing, I'm looking at it now, I thought there was something in there about, yeah, it says their works are fully covered by workers' compensation insurance. Something that actually came up on Friday, in trying to get some documents for the workers' compensation audit for the borough. Just to make sure that for Resnick and any other contractors that we may hire, that they provide a like a certificate of insurance or just proof of insurance for that, so that so that they're covered. So
Okay, so I think we can write that. I think on the bottom of the proposal, it says special instructions. We could probably add that to it, submit your.
Yeah, exactly. Just to make sure they provide it before, you know, along with the acceptance of the proposal. So, and I doubt that'll be an issue. It says they have it, they're fully covered. I don't know if it was gathered last year, but that's just something we'll need to make sure we do going forward with contracts. So,
Nancy, I think,
on it.
I'm assuming this is in the, well, you're gonna have to sign that, right? I think
Okay.
that. Should be it. Okay,
About the insurance, you mean?
well, we have to sign acceptance of the proposal.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we can
All
write
right.
that in there. Okay,
Okay, so anyway, we have a motion on the floor. Any other questions or concerns? In that case, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, and Dave, do you have a COG report or is it?
No, the COG meeting's tomorrow night, so I don't have any updates right now.
Okay, great. All right, anything else from council before we go to public comment? All right, great. Council will hear comments on public related items at this time. Please raise your virtual hand and clearly state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes if at all possible. And I see that either Donald or Rhoda Wharf has their hand up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's Rhoda Wharf, 636 3rd Street. I am very disappointed in the council's choice of going for a secretary instead of going for a manager. We need a manager, not another secretary. And I really am disappointed that all of you are having a tendency to go to a secretary that can do a manager's job. You know, we're trying to raise the bar, not, you know, go backwards. We're trying to, you know, progress. So I'm just expressing myself. I'm very disappointed that you're not, you know, focusing on getting a manager. Very disappointed. Thank you.
Thanks, Rhoda. I just want to mention here for a second that we're not going for a secretary in the way that a lot of people think of a secretary, like an administrative assistant. We're going, this is an actual job that is more than just being a secretary in the old sense of the word. So it's going to be a highly skilled person who has many skills that are close to a borough manager. And there's just a few things that they may not be able to do, but they'll be doing a lot of the work. And, you know, it's hard to know in a void because we don't know what we're getting, what we're doing definitively yet in terms of a description and an ad and all of that. So, did you unmuted? Did you have something else?
No, I was just going to, yeah, no, not really. I'm just disappointed. Yeah, that's, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments from the public? Wow, this is amazing. All right, well, that being
Good.
the case, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it, Nancy.
Second.
Okay. Okay, first by Sylvia, second by Ray, no hesitation there. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Night, night.
Night, everybody.
10:27 PM.
Yep.